Because of you, I love your radio show.
Welcome to Sound Opinions. I'm Jim DeRogatis. I write about rock and roll for the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I'm Greg Cott, the rock critic with the Chicago Tribune. And Jim, did somebody mention it was the 100th show of Sound Opinions?
I think that fact has been brought up. Matt
Did we
brought it up
flog that enough?
with great enthusiasm, and XRT has been plugging it all week. It's touching. It's nice to know we're loved here.
Oh, yeah,
Although we've never
absolutely.
gotten pizza. In one of the other stations, they bought us pizza. I never got snacks here.
Yeah, well,
We have Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin in the house tonight, and we still don't have snacks.
they close the late-night cafeteria when we come in. That's the problem.
I guess that is.
Did anybody bake brownies for you tonight, Billy? Or did you bring any with you?
Patty Martin did give me a ceremonial gingerbread man.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's neat.
Amazing. God.
Wow,
Patty
we
Martin
didn't get-
never gave me
we
one of
didn't
those.
get snacks.
There's Jimmy Chamberlin. All right, we got...
Welcome, guys.
Actually, it was a Jim Skafish gingerbread man.
That's like
very
the
tall and
Skafish.
lanky.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. gotcha.
There's our obscure Urge the Music War reference for the night.
Absolutely right. We're joined by Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin of Smashing Pumpkins. Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for stopping in.
Thank you.
We know you're a little bit busy this week.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So how are the rehearsals going? Is that what you guys call it? Do you still call it? Do you still call it rehearsal?
You're breaking up. You don't have to rehearse.
you
we
have to-
call
you
it
gotta-
social fun.
Me and Jimmy call it rehearsal. James and Melissa call it torture.
Hard to believe. Final two shows, of course, this week for the Pumpkins. Tomorrow night at the United Center, Saturday at the Metro. And they've taken a little break.
The show's Saturday?
Oh, my God, yeah.
That's the hot one. That's the hot one. Boy, those tickets, have you seen what those tickets are going for?
Yeah,
It's
that's
like
crazy.
absurd. It's
But
absurd.
we're worried for people because some degree of those tickets are going to be fake tickets. So
Yeah.
they're not legitimate tickets. So it's tough. Like Joe Shannon was just telling me a story that some man had called him today and spent $2,000 on tickets and found out there were fakes.
Wow.
Wow.
Sort of freaking out now because now he's probably promised his kid we're going,
Yeah.
and now they're not going, and he's out $2,000. So
I got an email today from a girl in Korea who has a ticket to the show, but forgot one crucial thing, a visa to get to the United States. Help me out. Can you help me get a visa to come see the Pumpkins on Saturday night? I know. I think that's a little bit beyond my control at this moment. I don't think I can handle that. But we want to do a little bit of news up front, and since you guys are here, we're going to be glad to include you in this discussion. Did you guys hear?
we have a bunch of people who probably are listening to Sound Opinions
Yeah.
for the first time since we're on an hour earlier than usual.
That's true.
And
You're right.
and what is this show? We should explain that.
It's two guys talking
about music.
Pompous windbags talking about
You
music.
gotta make it sound better than that, for God's sake.
it's sort of like Roger and it's like Ebert and Siskel, God rest his soul, but sort of way more opinionated and harsh.
completely.
Well,
Harsh. Huh?
he's right though. That's the thing.
That
That's
is
the problem.
true.
I think he nailed it. That's
No.
very
Well,
good.
the point is, people who love music, and you know this, both of you guys know this, because you both are music lovers. People who love music sit around on the couch, you talk about stuff that you bought that you love, and you try to convert
We
each
don't
other.
get paid for it. That's the difference.
You see, that's the scam. That is the scam that Cott and I have figured out. We have the best job in the universe. They pay us to do this. And, of course, you rail about stuff that you bought that's a hype. That's what this show is. We're going to talk music with you guys. But up top, we usually do news.
Okay.
So we got to talk about what's going on this week. And did you see, you follow the charts, obviously. You know the business, Billy. Beatles won.
Oh, yeah, good.
Debuts at number 1. Did you see that? That's amazing. They're selling us the same Beatles stuff that
right.
we have bought, that we have in our collections 15
but you know what?
times.
It's still the best. It
would
doesn't
you-
matter how many times you buy it. It's still the best.
Would you buy it again? Would you buy one?
Yeah, absolutely.
Why? Don't you own all
Because
this
I
stuff?
I'm actually a big fan of greatest hits because I think the greatest hits can sort of give you an overview of the work that you wouldn't necessarily have yourself, and especially when it has a nice flow. Like, I was a big fan of the Doors box set. I thought the way they put it together really showed me a different side of the band that was sort of the band's personal vision of the band as opposed to the kiddie version that's normally put across, you know? Mm-hmm. So I mean, let's face it. I mean, I was listening to this today actually in the car, in my friend's car, and it's insane, these songs. I mean, it's just like, every word, every lick. So, if anything, it's just a testament to the
Now, see, I
the
think this
greatness
one's superfluous to the Red and Blue albums. Because that already did that. That collected the A
Yeah,
and
but that
the
was
B
30 years ago. You're forgetting. You see, the
Yeah, but
whole
they're still in
context is
print.
different. Who's buying this record? It's not, mom and dad. It is, 16 and 17. The 16-year-old next door is buying this record.
No way.
Yes, they are.
It's mom and dad
Absolutely.
buying the record again.
You think so? 544,000 copies sold in the first week. Number one album in the country at the time, at the height of the record release season. I mean, that's an extraordinary achievement. 594,000. I'm sorry, 594,000 copies.
I'm not very impressed.
Yeah. Number 2 record.
I mean, 27 hit songs. You'd think they could do a little bigger.
Yeah, but like I
You
said,
would think so, but at the same time,
it's
30 years old. It's 30 years old. What are the 30-year-old rock and roll group could debut at number 1, sell nearly 600,000 copies?
I mean, to us, the Pumpkins, I mean, the Beatles are everything, so, I mean...
Well, it's true, and they didn't even deign to go on Total Request Live.
There you go.
These guys, you know
How
what I
did
mean?
they manage that, huh?
So that's
It did
500,000
not have the
albums.
Carson Daly seal of approval, and it
Without the
still sold
promoter.
600,000 copies? What the heck is wrong with
which
that?
brings us neatly into the other big chart story. Now, we won't have numbers until Wednesday, but the Backstreet Boys seem to be not doing... Billy's smirking over it. We got to cover this stuff.
I'm laughing because I saw in the middle of the night last night. I saw like the CNN interview that they always do when somebody's record's coming out, and the greatest quote from the interview was, in the setup, they're a little irked by the boy band tag, and then the quote from the band basically saying, we're not a boy group. We're sort of offended by this. We're a vocal group. And I thought, just take the money.
Yeah, right.
Just take the money.
We were talking about this last week. They are in for an image change. No pretty boy image of them on the cover of this black and blue record. Kind of a dark, sinister look on the back cover. They're growing up.
See, we know this from our experience. When you have massive success, this is when you start beating and abusing those around you. So it's perfect timing for them.
There you go.
The internal fighting has only begun.
There seems to be justice in the world, though, because they're not going to see. So the big question was, are they going to beat NSYNC?
Well, get this.
1.4 million copies in a week. NSYNC sold.
They ain't going to. No, NSYNC sold 2.5 million. Right?
Was it 2. No, it was 1.4 in the first week.
Was that all?
That's the all-time sales record.
Oh, okay. 1.4. You're right. The thing that shocks me is they announced this concert
Billy and
tour.
Jimmy are over there laughing at the pictures.
They're laughing at the pictures.
You really want to chuckle. Read the ones where they thank God and everybody else.
Yeah.
The thank yous are wonderful.
On top of this, what really gets me is that they announced these 2 shows, or at least one show right now, for February 12th at the Allstate Arena. The tickets are going to go on sale Saturday. Get this, $67.50 for a ticket to go see the Backstreet Boys. $49.50 are the cheap seats. The Smashing Pumpkins never charged $67.50 for a concert, did they?
I think probably this show right here is probably our highest ticket in America, $35.
So by that
economics
calculation, the Backstreet Boys are worth twice as much as the Smashing Pumpkins.
There's twice as many penises. Almost.
What did you say?
5-3.
I believe he's talking about.
They have us beat.
I believe he's talking about the gender makeup of the band. I finally got that. It took me about 30 seconds to cycle through that.
More
Okay.
boys.
Yeah. All right.
What are the economics of that, Billy? If they charge $67.50 plus $8 or $9 go to Ticketmaster, what do they take home?
On an Allstate Arena, probably in the neighborhood of $500,000, maybe.
Wow. So as a band.
Yeah, it depends on what their deals are. But I mean,
So
when you're at
100
the top of your game, you can demand insane deals because they want you. They want you in the venues.
$100,000 a boy, 100 per penis.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So that's after they pay off.
That's $100,000 per inch.
Ooh. All right.
He's talking about the executive model there. Yeah.
We're like, $600 an inch.
Yeah.
We are talking with Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin. We're going to get down to some Pumpkins business, but first we had one more news item. We're going to take your calls throughout this show as well. Hopefully you guys are going to take some calls from some fans. 773-777-8881. You can post online at the Metromix/go/sound messages board. We had one more news item before we wanted to get into the Pumpkins, and that was this rock and roll auction on Thursday. Now, you guys have given a lot to Christmases for Kids, that charity. And
we actually we have a special news bulletin. We actually just donated more stuff. So
what do you?
A guitar, and when we donate to guitarists, it's not one of these like ones we buy for $100 and then sign. It's like it's a real guitar.
Something you've used and
loved.
Yeah,
so it's all beat up from tour and everything. So it's real guitar, and he donated a snare drum signed.
Wow, what kind of snare drum?
Just a Yamaha Chrome snare drum. It's one of the ones I used on Machina.
So Christmas is for Kids, a long-running charity organization in town. This is the 12th annual rock and roll charity auction at the Park West, 7 p.m. on Thursday. $10 gets you in the door. And, obviously something like your snare drum, Jimmy, is going to go for bucks. But there's like little stuff, too.
I hope so.
Drumsticks and drum heads. And you can get some really neat stuff, signed posters. Basically, anybody who comes through town, the Jam folks, get them to sign something, give something, and all the charity proceeds go to buy Christmas presents for kids at homeless shelters and shelters for kids throughout town, and it's a really neat thing.
It's a cool event. I guess one of the big items this year is this called this Jukebox of the Century. It's a working jukebox containing 100 CDs that have had the booklet covers signed by the artists.
They were all signed?
Yes, and according to this, the CDs include jackets signed by the Rolling Stones, Bruce Springsteen, Led Zeppelin, Chuck Berry, John Mellencamp, Elton John, B.B. King, Carlos Santana, Sheryl Crow, Fleetwood Mac, on and on. That sounds like a heck of a prize.
Yeah.
So that is this Thursday at the Park West, the charity auction.
I always
Jam
wanted a
and XRTs.
jukebox. When I went to interview Chris Novoselic, when I went out to his place, right, he like lived in this really humble home. This was after the big success of Nevermind, and he was showing me around, and he and Shelley, his wife, lived there. And the only thing he'd bought were two jukeboxes, one for his singles and one for his CDs, and they were like beautiful things. They were really beautiful. And he said, "This is what I knew I was a rock star. I could buy a jukebox."
Do you guys have jukeboxes, or have you
I
ever
have a
owned one?
jukebox, yeah.
I don't.
And what do you put in it?
It's these days it's impossible to find like blues and really like late 50s 7-inch singles, but they can be found,
Mm-hmm. And that's what you put in there?
Yeah, because I bought the vinyl version, so because you can get the CD or the vinyl version. Wurlitzer makes a reissue model.
And the problem I always heard is that you have either the ones that have the big hole or the little hole.
Yeah, see, that's a problem. Like when I go overseas, I can't buy singles in a lot of countries because they have the little hole.
Yeah.
So, but
And do you
Germany
find it-
works
do you
because
find
they
that
have
you
the big
use
hole
it?
in Germany.
Do you find that you like people come over the house and you actually use the jukebox?
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's a great conversation piece, and
Great way
it's
to meet
also,
girls.
what's really cool is
All right, I'll take
it's
one.
my favorite part is it's got a random thing on it. So you got 100 sides in there, and
Right.
you just hit random, and you end up listening to some weird Ike Turner B-side about Lord knows what.
I think that's a great definition of success when you can buy a jukebox. I would
Absolutely.
kill to have a jukebox.
I would too, man. Can't afford one. You couldn't get one though at the auction on Thursday.
Yeah, but it says here on this fact sheet, Greg, that this thing's going to go for $100,000. So unless you're a Backstreet Boy,
That's
you just
true.
made your $100,000.
That's true. I'm not going to make Backstreet Boys money.
I don't know what the Trib pays, but it's a little over my.
No, that's about 3 years' salary at the Trib, I think. Anyway, we're gonna start in earnest with these Pumpkin Boys in a few minutes, but we got to take a break first. So thanks for your calls. We're gonna be hanging in there at 773-777-8881. It's Sound Opinions with Greg Kot and Jim DeRogatis. We will be right back with Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin of the Smashing Pumpkins after this.
No matter where you are, I can still hear you when you try.
But what are some of your favorite TV shows?
Oh, I love the Flintstones.
Oh, I love the Flintstones too. It's so good. Do you like that? Do you like Walks in the Park?
In the rain.
Oh, God. You know what? I want you to see The Music Man. Because
I've seen that. I love the Music Man.
Isn't Robert Preston good?
He's so good. Do you love Smashing Pumpkins?
Are you I love to do that.
Welcome back to Sound Opinions. I'm Jim DeRogatis from the Sun-Times.
I'm Greg Kot from the Tribune, and we are here, of course, with Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin.
Now,
of
what
the
was
Smashing Pumpkins.
what was that, Matt Spiegel? Ace sound bite.
Bowfinger. The Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy.
Right. Who was the chick, though? I forget.
Heather Graham, the lovely Heather Graham.
Did you catch that when it came out, Billy?
I did see Bowfinger on the plane.
Yeah, it's
That's where we catch most of our movies.
That's got to be. I mean, now
Was it a
that's
surprise when that scene came up? I mean, like, what did you think of that
that's
scene?
got to be a rich moment.
So when I travel, I watch the movies without the sound because I think they're much funnier. Because you already know what the dialogue's going to be.
This is an experienced
So
air traveler.
I saw Bowfinger with no sound, and then someone told me about that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. So,
That's got to be an odd experience. to
yeah,
suddenly
what is
find
that
yourself-
experience like to see yourself referenced in something totally out of your world, you know?
You're such a pop culture phenomenon that people are making jokes about you in screenplays.
we never reached the height though where we got the Saturday Night Live skit though. You know what I
but
mean?
would you want to be on Saturday Night Live now? I
No,
mean,
because but I'm saying when you get to that level where you're common comedy material,
Oh, that's true.
then you really hit the
that's true.
Yeah.
And Leno's making jokes about you or whatever.
right. So we
Yeah.
never hit that height.
Not
Right.
quite that high.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a little running order in this, and we're not going to reveal what it is.
right.
We've got a lot of people who want to talk to you, but we thought we want to start off a little bit and talk to you about records. You two guys about records, and talk about records that you guys liked and still like. And let's forget about the Smashing Pumpkins for a minute, and let's talk about stuff that you guys like.
Yeah, the stuff that turned you
in
on.
interviews that has come on, in interviews that has come up occasionally. You know, we've talked about everything from The Wall to, to you've covered Fleetwood Mac. I mean, stuff
Right.
that people don't normally associate with you guys, alternative rock per se.
Right.
And one of the things I always found interesting about Smashing Pumpkins and the way they would come up is that they were the the band with the uncool references. You
Right.
know,
Yeah,
they
we-
were getting compared to Boston.
We got that
and
from the
ELO.
We got that from the
yeah.
But the thing is we started that though in the first interviews we were doing. We were referencing Boston, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, which in 1989 was not cool. Like not
Sure.
cool at all. Especially with like indie rock scribes at colleges. I mean, it was not cool. So we sort of created that, and then it just seemed to follow us.
But what was it? I mean, was it just you were following your natural instincts, or was it a thing of just like we want to do something?
There you
we
go.
want to do something that just completely, runs counter to what everything else that we're seeing
Well,
out there.
I mean, I think I can set the stage for what he would talk about, but I know particularly growing up in Chicago in the 70s, there were two stations, WMET and The Loop, which is not like it is now. And the thing that was interesting about both of those stations is they were playing, their playlists were like The Cars, Judas Priest, Cheap Trick, Queen, the Beatles. So me, James, and Jimmy grew up all in the same sort of head mix as far as teenage music went. I don't think any of us were really big pop fans, except maybe when I was a smaller kid. So we all had that sort of similar reference material. So when we would sit around and talk, it's like, hey, you know that Queen song, Like, it wasn't a big deal to us. We didn't realize until later that it was uncool. You know what I mean? Or was perceived as uncool. We had we didn't look at it that way. So
At what point did punk and indie rock, as it was defined in like the late 80s, at what point did they dent your consciousness?
Well, for me in particular, I was living with my father when I was like 17 on the northwest side of Chicago, and I didn't even know there was such a thing as alternative music. I knew that there were a couple bands like New Order and stuff like that, but I didn't know there was this whole cultural movement. And one day I met these girls at a gas station, and they were like, hey, we're going to this place called the Metro to see this band, the Butthole Surfers.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, gee, that seems kind of strange, and the girl was cute, so I went.
What were you doing hanging out at a gas station? Wait a minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. A larger question.
So, I mean, my first sort of moment, was like, going and seeing this band, and I thought, I don't really understand this music, but I'm excited by it. These people don't look like the people I'm used to seeing. They're sort of like people you would see hanging out in the corner, but it sort of speaks to me in a way that, the guy with the perm didn't. So I was like, people that were living like I was living naturally, but they were making the kind of music that you would make out of that world, and was like, it sort of started to click, and I started going to Metro all the time because I just would go because I knew that I would see something I liked. So I would go to ska nights, I would go to punk nights, and I didn't even necessarily like a lot of the music, but I liked the culture. And then the other thing was the Club Medusas, which was a very big influence for a lot of the musicians that came out of Chicago. It was the teen club, and so they always playing Front 242 Ministry. So we had that sort of dance influence, house influence on top of that. And that sort of aggressive aspect. So punk was never a really big thing for me. I don't think it was really ever a big thing for you.
No, not at all. I was never a big punk fan.
Everybody talks about you, Jimmy, though, as kind of like the jazz guy. You were bringing some jazz stuff in. Is that true at all? Was that ever coming in? I mean, was that...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge jazz fan.
And was that kind of a bigger influence than maybe rock even before you came into the Pumpkins?
I think it's probably equal. I mean, it depends on the type of music, the type of song I'm playing. I mean, that's kind of... different influences tend to shine in different, scenarios. But, I think I'm more of a jazz fan than anything else.
So who are the big jazz drummers for you?
Well, obviously, Buddy Rich and Roy Haynes and, Elvin Jones, Tony Williams, people like that were big inspirations for me. But also, Bonham and Pace and Moon and those guys were... I mean, if you're going to play rock, you gotta play like those guys. You gotta play like Mitch Mitchell, John Bonham, Ian Pace. I mean, that's, that's the bread and butter, and I think the finesse and the shading and some of the littler things that make a bigger picture come from the jazzier side.
So when you come into this band, here's these three people, Billy, James Iha, Darcy Retsky, playing with a beatbox.
They weren't really, they were just kind of
drumming.
pods back then.
doing this sort of goth, this atmospheric goth thing, and then here's this 10-ton gorilla coming in there with the jazz licks and everything like that.
You gotta hear Billy tell the story because he actually remembers what I was wearing.
Well, it was sort of a clash of worlds because I met him once, but it was sort of very briefly at the Avalon Club, and then he came to rehearsal. And we were playing these sort of small goth pop songs. And, he walked in with a pink T-shirt, stonewashed jeans, and a mullet haircut driving a 280Z. And we were like, this is not going to work. But, and we actually, he gets a lot of credit because my first band that I was in was sort of tried to be like the Pumpkins, not musically, but in the idea of the heaviness and the lightness. And I'd sort of given that up and gone completely into like the sad rock Cure kind of thing. So when he showed up, we were playing these songs, and it only took about 2 or 3 practices where I realized that the power in his playing was something that we could sort of work with. So slowly that sort of started coming out, and probably over 6 months, then we started realizing, wow, we actually can rock.
What made you decide you wanted drums as opposed to like the New Order, the Cure, the Depeche Mode stuff?
Well, we wanted a drum. Drummers are impossible to find, and they're all lunatics, including him. And God bless you. I didn't sneeze.
It's always a drummer. The drummer always gets the crap.
Yeah, we have the best time, though.
That's why he's blonde now. So it's impossible to find a drummer. And even if you can find a drummer, it's impossible to find a good drummer.
Even when you have a drummer, sometimes
It's hard to find a drummer, yeah.
Yeah, that goes into some other stories. But
We were saving that for later once we had you guys lubed up.
But God, you guys making me lose my train of thought.
You got a drummer. You wanted a
No,
drummer.
well, but the real credit for even Jimmy coming in the fold in the first place goes to Joe Shanahan, because Joe sent us back the letter, said, yes, you can play at my club, but you have to get a drummer. 'Cause we just sent him a demo tape.
Joe Shanahan, owner of Metro, who's over here. Joe, what do you mean you had to get a drummer? You had all this like disco stuff going on there in the club. Why did they have to get a drummer?
Sue Miller at the time, I guess, Jim.
But I mean, you guys, Metro was.
We're a rock club. What are you talking about?
New Order was like your one of your
Joy
proudest
Division
bookings
was-
always. Yeah, right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but New Order had a drummer.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but it had the mechanized thing. It wasn't.
I mean, I don't know. I don't want to.
Why did they have to get a drummer? Why did they have to get a drummer?
The drummer story comes from, one of the first tapes that came to me from Billy, I was like, I liked what I heard, and I was like, if you could find your John Bonham, if you could find your Keith Moon, your Pace, you could be a really great and big rock band.
So it said rock to you,
it
as
said rock
opposed
to me.
yeah.
It just was missing that dynamic, sort of punch.
Billy, I went back to the first time you and I talked in '93 before Siamese Dream, and a big part of what we were talking about at that point was the English scene, the shoegazer scene,
right.
the scene that celebrates itself.
Right.
Those incredible guitars. Alan Moulder did some of that work.
Right.
Flood did some of that work. You later worked with those guys.
Yeah.
Bands like the Valentines, Ride.
Absolutely.
Because to me, that swirling psychedelic guitar sound was so cool, and that was the most exciting sound before grunge took place.
Absolutely.
And it seemed like you guys were going to be the American torchbearers of that. But then, of course, the English stuff never went anywhere.
Yeah.
So was that stuff an influence on you? Was that?
Yeah. See, for us, we've been really fortunate because at seemingly the right moments, there were bands that we really were amazed by that sort of said to us, "Oh, if you put these elements together, then you can take it to this spot."
Mm-hmm.
So for us, Jane's Addiction was the first band that sort of said, "You can combine the atmosphere and the sort of the goth part with heavy metal and make it work."
Yeah.
And so that was the first time it sort of clicked in our head, like, wow, we can actually make this work. And then before Siamese Dream, we wanted to sort of progress beyond that muscle. And I'd been listening to My Bloody Valentine, I think, since '88 or '89, particularly the first record, but then the second record came out while we were making Gish, and just the sound of that. And I thought, if I can combine the wall of that, but into sort of the heavy metal thing, then, so it's like things always seem to come along at the right moment that made me think, well, if we could put that into our band and make it sort of our own thing, then, so, there's been a lot of stuff like that. When you were talking before about influences, there's so many influences we have that we never talked about. Husker Du, jeez, I mean...
And not necessarily apparent in your sound.
No, it's like approach things. Sisters of Mercy, God, there's so many bands that we've been influenced by because we've never had a problem with saying, like we'll like a band, but we'll say, that one thing that they've got, we want that, so we'll steal the bass sound, or or the guitar approach on this sort of when they, like listen how they mix that when it goes there. So we just sort of took everything we wanted and just kept it mashing it together. In the beginning, it was extremely awkward because the styles were so disparate, but somewhere around 1990, it sort of started to click. And it really clicked probably between like 92 and 96. It just seemed like everything seemed to just kind of keep working off itself.
Well, that's interesting what you just said. I mean, what about Husker Du? What would you take from them, for example? I'd be curious to hear what influenced you.
Well, he was one of the first people to do that sort of really aggressive wall sound, of guitars, but it had a sort of scratchiness to it and a texture.
I remember John Perella's writing about that sound and really capturing it early on, where he was talking about how it sounded like 3 guitars playing at once.
Yeah, well, Mould used to, from what I've been told, is what you do is you slow the tape down, like 5 cents, and you play your guitar part, and then you speed it up 5 cents past 0, and you play your guitar part. So it's a natural sort of chorusing and phasing, and that's how he got that bigger sound. But also with Husker Du, the album Zen Arcade was a big influence, because I thought it's the same sort of thing. It's like, unlike The Wall, where it was like, I loved it, but it wasn't sort of my kind of music, here was more my kind of music, but it still had conceptual weight and basis, and could fill a whole double CD. So just as much as The Wall was an influence on the idea of making a double CD, so was Zen Arcade, with the idea that you could have acoustic material next to complete aggression. And it worked. And there's the sort of oppressive atmosphere of that album. I mean, I used to just sit in my room and just listen to that album and think, where do these guys come from? It's such a mystery to me.
Minneapolis.
Well, it explains a lot of things right there.
Having been there, I now understand. Yes.
We're talking to Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin. I'm Jim DeRogatis. He's Greg Kot. Before we leave the subject of Husker Du, you made it so clear with Gish, though, and with Cherub Rock in the early days, that you guys were not of the indie scene.
Well,
I mean, I could never in a million years have imagined. I mean, the way things worked out, you started with Caroline, moved to Virgin. I couldn't imagine you on SST. I couldn't imagine you on Homestead.
Well, even though there was interest initially from Sub Pop, they were sort of awkward about the idea of having the Pumpkins, because the Pumpkins were just that one step left out of the indie world. It's the same sort of concept. We took from indie music and alternative music what we wanted to take, and we took from that the spirit and the idea of integrity, but as far as a personal application of it. But that's where it stopped. If we wanted to sound like Boston, we weren't going to not sound like Boston because, Gerard Cosley or one of those kind of people were going to get uptight about it. They weren't our friends.
Yeah.
And we didn't have any friends in that scene, but we did come from that idealism, and I think we still have had that idealism. So it's always been an awkward thing, because we believe in it and we support it, and we've always supported those bands. We've never had the embrace from those bands, but at the same time, we've still waved that flag because it's the best flag to wave.
We should put out the annotated transcript of this conversation later, Greg, for people who don't understand, because there's kids who are going to be saying Gerard Kozloff.
Gerard
Kozloff, of course, is the guy who was at Homestead, put out records by Sonic Youth and the like.
He was the Steve Albini of the East Coast.
Oh my God! Kozloff used to have this fanzine called Conflict, and like every issue, he'd make fun of me and my fanzine. I remember this one horrible thing. This fat jerk Jim DeRogatis got a face like a pimple pizza, and he likes XTC. How can anyone like XTC? And I'd be sitting there thinking, oh, I like XTC. What's wrong with that? But there was this sense in the late 80s that if you like certain things, you are not cool. But the Pumpkins, you came out and you said, we like certain things. We don't give a fig if we're cool.
But see, I have to say that our first thing was we felt we are part of that. It was only when our publicist Janet Billig and indie writers started saying that we weren't cool that we realized that we weren't. I mean, we knew that we knew where we fit in Chicago politics, but we thought, well, that's just Chicago.
We got a call on this topic on line 3. Let's talk to Buddy. People can call in 777-8881. Hey, Buddy, welcome to Sound Opinions.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing? You're on with Billy and Jimmy Chamberlin and Jim and Greg.
It's Bobby. I used to shop at this store called the Record Hut at Belmont and Broadway, and I remember I walked in there one time and this long-haired record clerk was in there saying, I'm not defending Charles Manson. And then they went into some big conversation. Then I was at my cousin's house, and I picked up this Gish CD, and I was like, holy cow, that's that guy that works at the record store.
That's a good story.
I also used to see Billy on the bus that I rode all the time, the CTA bus. But at any rate, I wanted to ask Billy
He doesn't ride the bus anymore, Bobby.
It's a glamorous life.
I wanted to ask Billy about how did that influence his songwriting? Because obviously, I used to work in a record store. You get to sit around and listen to records all day. What was that like for him?
Well, growing up with my father, I was exposed to a lot of R&B and soul music and Hendrix and all that. But I thought, jazz was a passé thing. I thought blues was uncool. And so working in the record store, people would come in and say, hey, can you put this on? I want to listen to a song or something. So I put on this Chuck Berry, and I think, that's pretty good, So then on my own, I started thinking, I'll listen to all these Chuck Berry albums or John Coltrane. And over the course of a couple years, I found out that I liked all this other music just as much as I liked my heavy metal and sad music. And it really expanded my mind more in the idea that the genre thing is just such a waste of time. It's just so wrong. And if you really look at the innovators, they're really the ones who take genres and mash them together.
But if you didn't have genres, how would you file anything in the record store? Even if there would just be one bin, it wouldn't work.
Well, over there on Broadway in Belmont, it was pretty easy, you know?
Yeah.
We had 2 bins.
You're listening to Sound Opinions on XRT with Greg Cott and Jim DeRogatis. Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin from the Smashing Pumpkins are our guests. And we would be remiss in this segment of the show not talking about Chicago music specifically. One of the big myths about Chicago music in the 80s, I think, was that nothing was happening in Chicago because we did not have a band that has risen to the stature the Pumpkins did in the 90s. I've always contended it was an amazing period of music in Chicago with 3 major styles of music essentially being invented here between house music, Wax Trax, industrial rock, and that whole Albini noise rock thing, which was a huge influence on Nirvana and other bands like that. How much of that filtered into what you were doing, if at all? Because there was obviously a whole other strata of bands here who were saying constantly, we want to get signed and we want to get to the major labels, but they really didn't know how to quite go about doing that.
Right.
So I'm just curious about your attitude towards the Chicago scene in the mid to late 80s as you were developing your ideas.
Yeah, that's complex because I really was a big fan of the sort of the Wax Trax sort of sound and loved that style and aggression. Although it wasn't the kind of music I wanted to play, totally surrounded by the house music and that sort of atmosphere and that beat, and then certainly, like I said, Medusa's the sort of the ambience and stuff that was coming out of there. Whether it was Chris and Cozy or whoever else. I mean, I know it wasn't Chicago, but that had a lot of bearing because it was Chicago related. But the main thing for us as a guitar band was, we knew we didn't fit in the sort of Albini end, and so the other end was sort of the pop rock, guys in flannel shirts. And we've pretty much, for the most part, detested that. Not so much that we didn't like the bands, because there were a lot of good bands, but we hated the sort of posture and attitude. And we saw it as sort of small thinking. We thought, we sort of looked at it as like, no wonder no one ever gets out of Chicago, They're more worried about sort of being funny and, being entertaining when it's like no one is really... And then you'd go see a national band and they blow you away because they just were so powerful. Mm-hmm. And you look at these bands, you think, if they rehearsed more or whatever, I don't know. So... it sort of pushed us, in a polar way. But there were certainly a lot of fantastic bands, Green and Material Issue and Precious Wax Drippings and I can't think of their name. 11 Dream Day. Mm-hmm. Fantastic bands, really great live bands. But there was sort of that mentality at that time that it was uncool to be good, And I don't mean that disrespectfully, but it was like, no one really had the posture of like, we're coming out here to kick your ass. It was more the posture of like, we're playing and then we're going to go back to school, Mm-hmm. And that just sort of didn't jive with our Boston ethic, Now,
how much that's something you've talked about so much through the years, the work ethic of the band. But let's pose this to Jimmy. The heck with the boss. How much did you guys actually rehearse in those early pre-Gish? What was a typical week like? How many hours were you guys woodshedding?
At first, we probably rehearsed 3 days a week.
You got to factor in the acid here too.
Well,
come on.
Back then, it was
Gish,
a little better.
Acid,
It's a little better than back then.
Yeah, okay.
But when we, our whole deal is when we work, and that's pretty much all we do. Like for all of our records, we're just every day. I mean, if we could get together every day, we would get together every day. And
that was true from the start.
Pretty much. I mean, we had starting a band is a lot harder than being in one, and it takes a lot more work in the embryonic stages just to kind of find your sound at all, and then try to work with that clay.
So was it? I mean, were you literally playing those songs on Gish 1,000 times before you ever got in the studio, or what was it?
I don't think we really had the resources or the space before we made Gish to work that hard.
We wanted to. But the other thing that he sort of said that's I think key to the question you're asking is like we never had like a posse. So when we would rehearse for 4 hours, you'd go hang out with other bands. It'd be like people drinking beer, hanging out, telling jokes. I mean, we get in, rehearse for 4 hours, and go home. Mm-hmm. Our band has never been like a social thing for us.
It's not like party time or.
Yeah, we get together and like today we rehearsed, 6 hours.
Yeah.
And then beyond sitting and taking.
We were joking about this before you guys.
That's pretty funny for a band that's on its final shows.
Your break
6 hour
Sunday,
rehearsal.
you're done. Sunday, you're done.
Nobody's
no
going to care. It's like one of those things where,
doing?
like, if you play a bad show, people say, "Well, they played a bad show. I'm not going to go to the next one."
Tough
well, there's
luck.
not going to be a next one.
Write a letter.
We've gone this far, being
Yeah, I mean,
this anal.
Would you
so-
like learn a whole new set for tomorrow night's show?
Yeah,
or what?
pretty much.
the more we hang out now, the better it'll be in the afterlife.
All right, we got to take a break. Jimmy Chamberlin and Billy Corgan are our guests on Sound Opinions on XRT. We are going to be back. We're going to be talking about the alt-rock 90s and what that all meant. We're going to talk about why this band is breaking up. What the heck the real reason behind that breakup
Are they
is.
breaking up?
I heard that.
Why are we doing a whole show?
I don't know. You know, a band that's breaking up. Why do we care? We're going to tell you why we care. And we're also going to. Jim and I are both going to play our Pumpkins DIJs, our Desert Island Jukebox. What one Pumpkin song would Jim and I take to the desert island? We're going to play that later on.
And then we're going to have Billy tell us why we're wrong.
We're going to have the Peanut Gallery say why you guys are so screwed up. All right, we're going to be back with all of that on XRT Sound Opinions.
And you'll see who you are. What takes me?
It may be bleak, but this music is really getting to the crowd. Making teenagers depressed is like shooting fish in a barrel.
Stay in school. Your hero, Homer.
Hey, Cannonball. I like your statement. When life takes a cheap shot at you, you stand your ground. Billy Corgan, Smashing Pumpkins.
Homer Simpson, smiling politely. You know, my kids think you're the greatest. And thanks to your gloomy music, they finally stopped dreaming of a future I can't possibly provide.
Well, we try to make a difference.
Welcome back to Sound Opinions.
A classic.
That is a classic from The Simpsons.
Number one Simpsons of all time.
Is it really?
right?
Homerpalooza, yeah.
Very cool.
The alt-rock.
The number one.
The alt-rock Simpsons.
I just got a check for $23 from that show
Hey.
in the mail.
Royalty check still from The Simpsons. That's
Just
amazing.
rolling in.
They did
Residuals.
you well. You looked. I think you were the one who looked most like you.
Yeah,
the
I'm very
cartoon.
cartoon-like in real life.
Shows you how clueless I am. I go, God, that sounds like their real voices. You guys really did do that, though. That's
Now, see,
amazing.
You didn't make Saturday Night Live, but I mean, Simpsons
I'd
is
say that's a
cooler
cooler
anyway.
badge anyway.
I
Yeah.
have to- and not that this is frightening, but it's frightening in sort of a cultural sense. The number one most talked about thing as I go around the world is being on The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Wow.
Any country,
Yeah.
any place, any age group, The Simpsons.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Like it's like 50-year-old moms. I mean, it's like that sort of level.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, there you go. So they are part of the
And
zeitgeist.
we think rock has an impact. I mean,
Yeah. Well, cartoons.
we're in the wrong
Where it's
business.
I know. And then talk about low impact. This is the 100th episode of Sound Opinions.
There you go.
They're doing a Simpsons on you guys.
That's
I
right.
think.
Greg Cott and Jim DeRogatis
Proudly living in the
toiling away
margins.
in obscurity. We're going to be talking. We're talking with Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin of the Smashing Pumpkins, and we want to talk a little bit about the scene that they came out of. That what happened to alternative rock? I mean, end of an era kind of thing. Some people are talking about that. Billy, you told me the other day that you felt that you had accomplished about 60% of what you had envisioned for this band.
Right.
What exactly did you mean by that?
Well, certainly I think Jimmy's sudden departure and sort of the subsequent problems within the band and then also sort of culturally all what went on with alt rock and stuff. I don't think we sort of hit all the things we wanted to hit. I mean, you want specifics? I don't know. I think we could have made the left turn and found, like, you know, the Smashing Pumpkins beyond the sort of rock cliche Smashing Pumpkins. You know, the band started as, like I said, we were sort of took everything we liked and sort of mashed it together. But I think we had the moment there where we could have formed an even bigger, newer sound and taken that to a whole nother level. But I don't think we ever managed to fully pull it off.
Well, now, you were talking before about taking everything and sort of things arriving at the right time and being able to take from that. To what extent do you think the Pumpkins tapped into a zeitgeist that was? I mean, you know, there was an energy at those early Lollapaloozas, including the one you guys were at, where it was really refreshing. You know, to some extent, yes, all that Baffler stuff where they were making fun of the henna tattoos and but people were going in the Greenpeace tents and people were thinking about gay rights and people were wearing pink triangle T-shirts. They were having purple hair and they were piercing everything. They were saying, I may be the uncoolest kid in school and kids beat me up, but here at Lollapalooza I can be myself and celebrate that. So there was a real energy there that was one of the most exciting things I've seen in rock and roll. And then it dissipated. Where did it go? How did that happen?
Well, to answer the first question, I mean, there's no doubt that the what's going on in the culture plays into the music. I think that it creates sort of higher levels of work, and then in a competitive sense, everybody's sort of trying to top each other. I think the late '60s is a good example of this sort of similar thing, where when you lost that sort of momentum, those very same artists couldn't produce the same level of work. And I think it was. And
you're talking about like Pet Sounds and Sgt. Pepper's coming out within months of each other and feeding off each other.
But to answer the second part of your question, I think. I've said this before, so I hope I'm not being redundant, but I don't mean not tonight, somewhere else. But I really believe that the alternative indie mentality sort of fed into when they build something that they could build a car that lasts for a million years, but they build you a car that's going to fall apart. The indie alternative mentality was the sort of built-in end game for alt. What we have now is a pale imitation of those ethics and those ambitions.
So you're saying it was designed obsolescence?
I don't think it was purposeful. I think it was just in the program. And I think, everything from Kurt Cobain's Suicide Letter to Pearl Jam sort of, using MTV to sort of launch into the marketplace and then saying, no, we don't really want this, and then disappearing from that.
The Ticketmaster Crusade.
Ticketmaster Crusade, the corporatization of the music, because and then also this is sort of an often overlooked point. Show business works. Okay, you can argue with it, but it works. And when you take people who are one day playing in a garage or playing in a small club for 50 people, and you're suddenly thrusting them on a stage in front of 12, 14,000 people, and they don't come from showbiz mentality. They come from, I'm going to get up here and do what I want to do.
Right.
I'm not going to, I saw Nirvana where they didn't play Teen Spirit because they didn't feel like it, and all those kids went home mad.
Right.
It's that sort of thing. We were faced with that. We took it on in a confrontational way, and we lost. I mean, it cost us a lot of fans. It cost us a lot of. We may have gained a grudging respect, but I mean, it cost us big time to not play that game.
Now, how old are you now, Billy? 33.
33. Yeah.
All right. So, and we're all Gen Xers. To what extent do you think the shift from Generation X to Generation Y, we've got now the biggest demographic group of teenagers since the baby boom.
Right.
It's all the baby booms had kids, and they've got this huge sea of pubescent kids out there now. And it's night and day. A Limp Bizkit concert in year 2000 is a completely different experience than a Smashing Pumpkins concert in 1994.
Right.
And to what extent did you feel that slipping away? Like, I'm losing touch with these things?
See, and you can hopefully back me up on this. We felt it slipping away during Lollapalooza.
Yeah.
So it's what, 93, 94?
That was 94.
Yeah.
And our whole posture at Lollapalooza was, oh my God, this is going totally horribly wrong. Because we realized that the shift had already taken place, that the alt kids, the true alt kids, were being swamped by the sort of the fad part.
Right.
When we went on Lollapalooza, we naively thought we were going to be playing to 30,000 alternative kids. And what we realized is we were playing to 2,000 alternative kids and 28,000 kids that would now be listening to Britney Spears or Eminem.
But I had that conversation with Kurt Cobain, and it was still empowering nonetheless for him to be on stage in a dress in front of those kids who would be on the football team who would be beating up kids like him otherwise.
But by the same token, I saw for me that moment came in '93, about 9 months before Lollapalooza for you guys, when Nirvana headlined at the Aragon. And Kurt's up there singing Polly, a song about a rape from the rapist's point of view, a very nasty song with a real point to it. And these frat guys are singing along at the top of their lungs, waving their beers over their heads, singing along to Polly. And I suddenly realized they're not getting it. They don't understand what the song's about at all.
On the sort of the most simple base level, I completely agree with you, Jim, that the message still somehow seeps through. The difference is it didn't take hold in a way that kept us empowered. And look at I'll take myself out of this group. The best minds of Gen X, Vedder, Cobain, Courtney, Trent Reznor. If you look at the top Soundgarden, you look at nobody really got it right. Nobody really really drove it all the way home. Guns N' Roses did a much better job of it than any of the alt bands ever did.
Oh, I don't know about that. Somewhere in Montana, Billy, there's a kid whose life was changed by Courtney Love or by you, who is going to be the next Kurt Cobain.
No,
who would have never, you know, and he was able to go to Walmart and buy your record, whereas he would have never gotten it if it was on SSD.
And I was that kid too, you know.
Right.
I mean, I was that kid that found the Husker Du record or whatever. I agree with you, but we're talking about, you know, every 20 or 25 years, this cultural moment rolls around, and it was like, you know, Cobain and Vedder on the cover of Time. I mean, it doesn't get any higher culturally than that. If your mom knows who these people are, that doesn't get any higher. That we had a chance to change the music business. We had a chance to change the consciousness of the world. Do we change the consciousness of a select group of people? I hope so. But did we really make? I mean, we had the chance to make as big an impact on our culture as the late '60s people did with the Woodstock generation. And you know, if you look at the symbolic things that happened, Woodstock '99 being the sort of the bottoming out of that. That's a hard thing to watch happen. Yep. That's a hard thing to watch happen.
Yeah, but you did make that impact. As I'm saying, you're selling yourself short. I mean, you know, Altamont happened 6 months after Woodstock. You know, the whole '60s was a hype, man. Right. They didn't, and you know, all those people grew up to be yuppies.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe I bought the dream that never existed, and someday somebody will buy our dream that never existed
there you go.
too.
Well, we're talking to Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin on Sound Opinions. I think we have a call about Nirvana that's on topic. Let's talk to, is it Keith on line 2? Welcome to Sound Opinions, man. Sorry to keep you holding.
That's all right. What's up? How you doing?
Good.
I got a question for Billy Corgan there. Do you think that, you know, you guys lived in the shadow of Nirvana? And if you did, you know, how did that affect your music at all?
No, we never felt we lived in the shadow of Nirvana. We felt that that we were, you know, an equal peer of Nirvana. I mean, certainly Nirvana's the most influential band of our generation, but we felt we were a better band in a lot of different ways, and in a lot of ways, even at Nirvana's height, we were outdrawing Nirvana, and but we never got that sort of credit. So we never got the cultural credit. But I think the Pumpkins, you know, were just as important and just as strong. Just a different thing. It's like, you know, the Pumpkins were the Doors. You know, if Nirvana was the Beatles and the Pumpkins were the Doors or something, and both need to exist to create balance in the universe.
Mm-hmm. What do you think Cobain did right?
What did he do right?
Yeah, what's the best thing Nirvana did musically? You know, just from a songwriting perspective.
See, the thing about Nirvana and Kurt in particular is his talent was so simple. You know, it was in his voice and it was in his lyrics, but he put it across in such a simple, unsophisticated way that was the pure raw beauty of it. You know, I certainly don't have that kind of talent. You know, but the ironic thing was, and I know this from talking to Courtney, you know, he could have made, you know, White Album. He had that level of sophistication. He was attracted to the punk rock ethic. So in that sense, he was a John Lennon kind of character. He could have done anything he wanted. He could have transformed himself from a punk rock guy to a acoustic balladeer to you know, he could have made techno records. He could have done whatever he wanted to do. So he did have that level of talent, and certainly, you know, I always will give him his props. He opened that door, and he opened the door for all of us.
It's WXRT AM and FM in Chicago. We're talking with the Smashing Pumpkins, Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin, or at least two-thirds of the remaining original members of the band who are still in the band these days.
I think James just quit.
Yeah.
Just called in.
Yeah. James is listening to this interview and going, I quit, man.
Well, he's realizing, what the hell am I rehearsing for?
That's right.
It's too hard work.
I'm rehearsing with these guys. Anyway, the one thing that I think is interesting about that period, you mentioned Nine Inch Nails, you mentioned Nirvana, Pearl Jam. A lot was put on the fact that, you know, you guys were sort of looking at each other competitively, and some people may take that as a diss or saying, well, that you know, wow, why should music should be cool, man? It shouldn't be competitive. But I think it's a good thing. I think it was a good thing when the Beatles and Stones and Dylan and the Beach Boys were all hitting on all cylinders in the '60s. They were saying, you know, they just came out with the Revolver. I got to make a better album than that, you know. And the Stones were listening to what the Beatles were doing, saying we got to come up with a better album than Sgt. Pepper.
Somehow, I don't think Fred Durst is saying I'm going to show up Jonathan from Korn.
Well, we're reduced to NSYNC and the Backstreet Boys, sort of saying, well, we're going to sell more records than they do.
Sell more records,
but it's not about the art anymore. It's about
I can make a greater
things.
piece of art than Nookie.
How important was that in shaping the band, though? In shaping the band in the early '90s, in terms of, like, I mean, were you looking at Nevermind and saying, Jesus, we gotta top that the next time out?
Well, I know I'm you know, I'm going to get beat over the head for this. What was difficult was Butch Vig, who produced Gish and then went on to produce Nevermind immediately after that. You know, we just spent 4 months with Butch Vig sort of selling him on our approach. how we wanted to hear our album sound. So when we heard Nevermind, two things struck us. Number one, what an incredible, unbelievable album. And number two, it was basically the Pumpkins production put on top of Nirvana. So, so it was sort of like, okay, so it's like, okay, if everybody's going to look at this, we can't do that, so we have to sort of take it a whole nother step. And certainly the pressure of the times with the sales of Pearl Jam and Nirvana, I mean, we felt a great pressure that if we didn't come up with a record that was huge, I mean, we were done. And it was that simple in our minds. We felt like our lives depended on it, and I wish we felt that way all the time, but we don't believe in that anymore. But we did then.
In retrospect, do you think you took it too hard on yourself? I mean, that was a very tough period for you between Gish and Siamese Dream. You drove yourself to the edge of suicide, you've now said.
Yeah.
And, I mean, did you push yourself too hard because of that?
I have a great quote from Vig about that, if I can find it. He was saying, I quote, "They were not necessarily a happy bunch of campers." But there was the typical stuff with bands where there were a lot of things going on personality-wise. One day they'd love each other, the next day they'd hate each other. But they have it particularly bad.
And Jimmy, you were hanging around this driven guy. What was your reaction?
Sometimes
in the
we'd love and hate in the same day.
See, he's probably a better person to ask this because he was watching me go through all these mental machinations.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, you were hanging around Billy every day at that point, and Billy was obviously probably at his most driven, I would say, knowing at that point. It seems like, anyway. How do you handle that?
Probably scared is probably a better word. That whole Siamese Dream thing was, like he said, I mean, it was, doing that tour with Pearl Jam and the Chili Peppers, you could really see the fragility of the scene we were in, and like you said, in '93, even you could see that it started disintegrating right before our eyes. So it was, the pressure was on to keep up with those bands, and it was very scary. I mean, like you said, I mean, that was our career. We didn't have any money at that point. I mean, it was like either make this great record or go back home and get a job. And that's a really scary place to be, and it just compounds other things that are happening in your life. When you put, where am I going to get rent money, and I got to eat and all this other stuff, and on top of making a great record, it becomes doesn't make for hey, how's it going?
Were there ever so when Vig says not happy campers, were there like blows traded, screaming matches?
Never been a punch thrown.
No
never
punches.
Punch thrown. No. Oh, well, so you're better than 90% of bands right there.
We spit a lot though when we scream.
There's a lot of that
in each other's faces. Is there a Trogs tape out there? The famous tape of the Trogs fighting over how to... You ever hear that?
Yeah, but if there was, it would be pretty frightening.
Yeah, we always made sure the tape was off.
Yeah. Let's go to some more phone calls. Let's go to Tim on line 2. Tim, you're on Sound Opinions with Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin over the Smashing Pumpkins.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey.
My question is that it seemed like, I think Siamese Dream is an amazing album. It seemed like after that, your guys' sound changed quite a bit. And I was wondering if that was a response to, like what you saw going on around you in the musical environment. I can't help but think that would affect how you would write your next album.
Right.
Or was it not? Did it not?
Yeah.
Did you not consider that and try to cast that aside and do something different? Or
right.
I don't think it's better or worse. I just think it's there was like a noticeable change.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. We had a meeting before we made Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, and literally at the meeting, I said, it's obvious to me alt-rock's on its way out. So, do we have one more alt-rock album in us to make, or do we just go radically to the left now? And everybody agreed that even though alt-rock was sort of starting to spin its own wheels, that we hadn't sort of made our definitive statement for what we wanted to make as a band. So we literally, at that meeting, we said, okay, we're going to make this double CD, we're going to sort of put it all across, we're going to wipe the deck clean, and then we're going to go and try to make a whole new sound. So, we tried to do that on Melancholy, and then after Jimmy left, I still tried to stay with the agenda that we'd already set, that we were going to make this change. Whether that was wise or prudent or, mentally sane, I don't know, but that was sort of the thinking. As far as being influenced, we've always been sort of generally influenced because we want to sort of, I hate the idea that musicians try to pretend that they live in a bubble. You know, musicians listen to music more than anybody else. So your influence, but the influences are often tangential. And, you know, like for me, folk music was much bigger influence on Adore than electronica. I chose to sort of frame some of the folk in electronica because I thought it gave it a fresh feel. But it's really a folk album. I made the mistake of sort of saying it was electronica, but it was really a folk album. So it's that sort of thing, you know.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
I disagree with you. I've talked to a lot of musicians who never listen to anything else.
They're lying.
Really? You think so?
They're totally lying.
Prince says he listens to nothing but Prince records.
You listen, Wayne Coyne. I've never ever bounced an influence off of him that he liked.
Yeah.
I don't think he listens to anything but Flaming Lips music.
Oh, I don't know about that. He talks about stuff like Yoko Ono records.
Well, once in a while,
like
it's John
that.
Lennon, but nothing in the last 20 years.
I don't buy it.
Yeah.
You don't buy it?
Even you know, a musician walking through a mall is going to hear something that no one else is going to hear.
Yeah.
You know, musicians hear things in like tractor trailers. You know, it's you know, you can't sort of assign it. I mean, you know, sometimes we play stuff and I realize we're basically playing 70s theme music. You know, where did that come from? From watching too many episodes of Beretta?
And did you ever find yourself when you realize that you took something that is another song, you have to throw it out?
Yeah. Oh yeah. We've always had that rule. If it sort of reminds us too much of something, we throw it out.
In regards to this alt rock stuff, though, I just want to touch on one other thing. And one of the big guiding forces that you touched on, Billy, was the fact that there was sort of like this pullback from like going all the way to the summit. You know, let's not go all the way to the top. Let's not put our flag at the summit because there's something a little bit
cheesy,
squirrely about that.
Cheesy,
we don't want to do
would
that.
Be the right word, yeah.
And we got a bunch of postings on the Metro Mix board. One of the posters of Darren Graham was talking about this issue, raising this issue, basically talking about you and the band. He said he was desperate. He was a desperate careering player. Perfect for the industry's maw, and now it has spit him out.
Right.
Basically raising the whole idea that the Pumpkins were careerists as opposed to these other alt-rock bands who were too cool for that kind of thing. They put the music first. The Pumpkins put their career first.
Well, and there was a second email that was very much like that by Brian Beck, who used to do a fanzine in town called Cool Hat, saying, how come you guys didn't look at REM or U2 and see that there was a model to continue and have a career without self-destructing? I mean, they're two sides of the same coin.
Okay, on the sort of the critical side, the careerist side. I mean, let me point out the most obvious thing. You make your second record, it sells 4 million copies. You don't make a double CD. It's career suicide. It's commercial career suicide. All the European labels freaked out. They said, we'll never be able to sell this thing. Are you crazy? And our parent company, Virgin America, said, are you sure you really want to do this? I mean, this is not something you do now. You know, you wait till you're established. You're not established. Okay, then we make the double CD, and it goes on to be the biggest selling double CD. And what do? We make an album of completely opposite music. I mean, if that's careerist, I don't know what is. You know, I don't know what is. That's a ridiculous thought, and I'm always offended by that notion. See, people confuse the Pumpkins' love of arena rock, the Pumpkins' love of grandeur, the Pumpkins' love of a music that's played with passion as being careerist. That's what would offend us about the Chicago scene in the 80s, and that what still offends me with the sort of Pavement crew. You love music, you wouldn't be in a band if you didn't want to play it. If you want to choose to play in front of 50 people, go ahead, have a good time. It's never been our thing. We want to have fun, and to us, having fun was playing great shows the way we want to play in front of a lot of people. As far as the other thing sort of going on, that sort of feeds into the same thought. We have our own issues of integrity, and listen, we're not completely rich people. We just came back from the biggest tour we've ever done in Europe. I mean, we could just be a big European band. We wouldn't even have to sell records anymore in America. We're totally fine in Europe to sell records, and European audiences are traditionally much more supportive. We could put out live albums and B-side albums and just go on like that forever. It's not in us. If you look at our whole career, the 10 years of Pumpkins in the public, and you draw the line across it, you see that we had our own set of integrity, and it doesn't fit either model. It doesn't fit the we want to be bigger than anybody else model, and it doesn't fit your indie model. It's the Pumpkins model. It's our own, and that's all I can say to that.
Has the attitude changed in Chicago at all? Because I think there's always been this sort of attitude about rock stars. You want to be a rock star. As soon as you tell people that, Jim Ellison was not looked upon kindly when he said, "I want to be a rock star."
Right.
The guys in Urge Overkill were crucified for it.
Right.
You yourself.
To be fair,
this band.
they could be jerks.
Yeah. Well, it goes with the territory. You know what can I tell you? But at the same time, it's one of those things where, has the attitude changed in the city? Is the city capable of producing another band at the level of the Pumpkins? Or are the obstacles too great here in terms of creating that level of a band? Because it's a lot easier to go to L.A. and do this kind of thing if you want to be a rock star.
It's easier to be a jerk in L.A.
I will say that it's not easy to be ambitious in Chicago. The odds are stacked against you, and particularly 10 years ago, there wasn't as much critical writing about music. There wasn't as much now the reader, devotes 4 or 5 different pages every week to different acts, whether it's somebody coming in from Japan or some weird art thing. You didn't have that 10 years ago. You guys, your respective papers write a lot more about rock and music, so it's been very, very difficult. And, as you know, it's if you've got enough guts to get on stage and sing songs about yourself, then you must have something. You can't sit there and pretend that you don't have an ego, you don't have something that you want to put across. What makes you think that your song or your voice is worth hearing over anybody else's? That's why someone like, the guy from Pavement, that's a joke. He wants everybody to listen to him. His game is, I'm going to pretend I don't want it to happen. And he has to appease everybody he has to appease. Our game is, we want people to hear. We've never been shy about that. I've got an interview from 1988 with us basically saying, we're going to be a big band, and this is what we want to do. We've never gone off that. We've never changed. And that's that.
For the annotated transcript, of course, Pavement had... What song was that again? It took the Pumpkin
Range Life.
Range Life,
right?
Yeah.
I'm still waiting to break his nose for that one.
You've never actually...
His day of reckoning will come.
He's smarmy. He's very smarmy.
Yeah, his day of reckoning will come. He doesn't know I'm 6'4", 200 pounds.
Steve Malcolmus.
He'd run. You get
his day of reckoning will come.
All right, we're talking to Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back, talk a little bit about the workings of the Pumpkins as a band at different points. 773-777-8881 is the number. Metromix/go/sound messages opinion board, and we'll be back.
It must be XRT. My hometown, Chicago is. Hello, Chicagoland.
I tell you, little buddy, this whole island is bewitched.
Just across the way, island lost at sea, and I'm stranded on my own. Stranded far from home.
Do you remember we were shipwrecked together?
Welcome back to Sound Opinions. I'm Jim DeRogatis.
I'm Greg Kot, and that is, of course, the Desert Island Jukebox theme music.
There you go. In case you've never listened to Sound Opinions.
Gilligan's Island for rock geeks.
One of the things we do, Greg and I take turns every week, Billy and Jimmy, talking about a record we'd take to the Desert Island with us. Since this is a special all-pumpkin show, how you guys holding up? Are we beating you up too much?
No, we're good.
We're saving the really good
back
stuff.
to the fluff.
We're saving the really good stuff.
Look in their eyes.
For about 11 o'clock, we'll get to the stuff about breaking up. And
I keep having the,
we let you mention Courtney. We went right past that. We're going to wait to get back to her.
And I keep having this nightmare where my integrity keeps getting questioned, and then I keep waking up.
It's not really happening, yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, God, I'm 33. Jeez, leave me alone.
When will I not have to worry about it? So Greg and I were each going to do a track and talk about why we love this song, the one Pumpkin song we would love above all others. And in the interest,
I already know yours.
You do, what is it?
Hummer.
No, I wasn't going to do Hummer. I could change if you want.
Ooh, that's an inside joke.
Get back to that
That's
later.
an inside joke between me and Jim.
Life's a bummer when you're a Hummer. Flip the coin, Matt. Who gets to go first, Greg or I?
Well, you guys need to choose heads or tails. That would
Call it
help.
in the air, Jim.
All right, I'll
Call in the air.
Heads.
It is. And tails it is.
All right. So Greg Kot gets to go first. I'll do mine a little later.
Well, this is a very perverse choice, but rock critics are perverse animals, so
and you're allowed to
right
critique his critique.
Oh, allowed to critique
Encouraged,
it.
in fact.
And I feel bad about this because Jimmy Chamberlin's here, and he's my favorite rock drummer, or one of them, besides Jim DeRogatis, of course.
Oh, no.
My favorite rock drummer of all time, Jim DeRogatis, is here. My second favorite, Jimmy Chamberlin.
I've always held Chicago's rock drummers, man. You and what's his name from Urge Overkill?
What's his name?
We have
Blackie,
man. He was a monster. We've produced many fine
Johnny Machine.
Absolutely, and Mike from Material Issue.
Yep.
Fantastic. Yeah.
See, all the Chicago's
Davis
great
like that.
bands were driven by the drummers.
There you go. He's the engine. He's the engine, but he's not on this song. And so it's kind of like weird. How do I explain myself? But I've always had a soft spot for Adore, the sort of the shaggy stray of the Pumpkins.
Yeah.
I don't know. I sort of gravitate towards the weird. I believe, Billy, you described this as arcane night music was the attempt here at one point, right? Yeah. Anyway,
that held.
Yeah, it sort of didn't quite hold all the way through the album, right? Yeah, definitely not. But the one song
you worked on how to sell these to the press, didn't you?
I did. I have to say, on Adore, I did a horrible job.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. Well,
my worst.
But did you sit down and think about? Okay, I'm going to stress in all the interviews. I'm going to say arcane night music.
You know what happened is, it was one of those sort of blurbs, like where you run into like a reporter at a party. Like they might even been a Rolling Stone guy, and he said, "Oh, what's the next album sound like?"
Yeah.
And I jokingly said, techno music."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Because
it was
nothing. We read The Wall for Melancholy. We read that everywhere before it came out.
Because I think that was sort of generally apt in the sense of the reach, but that sort of inside joke. Just like I made the joke about Britney Spears about the band breaking up. Everywhere I went in Europe, I heard that. Your band it basically was distilled to band is breaking up because of Britney Spears. Swear to God. Right. So I learned a hard lesson that my little joke about it being techno never left.
Right.
It never left. And so once I started realizing the damage of that, then I started trying to think, how can I put this across? So yes, I actually had to think about that, but it still didn't. The damage was already done.
Yeah, it's interesting because Bono made the same mistake with the pop album. It's our techno record. I think it was a flippant comment. There's exactly one techno song on that entire record, but it was sort of written off as like this sort of like techno side project, attempt to jump on this bandwagon kind of thing when it was nothing of the sort. But that's the press.
We got the same.
In contrast to like REM, who I think are the masters. REM will get together before each record. Like Monster will sell this as the rock record. And they are just they stick to their point. They're like Gore and Bush.
Yeah,
they just don't go off the script. They sell it, and it always works for them.
That's why they're REM.
Yeah. They are the Teflon rock band.
We're too reckless and dumb, really.
Yeah. Well,
we're too all over the place to really stick to anything.
Maybe not as calculated. But anyway, the song I want to play is Shame. And I wouldn't say it's the... I don't think I've ever heard this song on the radio anywhere. Maybe XRT has played the song, but I can't imagine any other rock station playing it. I play it all the time, though, because I don't know, I love the atmosphere of this song, and it's basically... Billy, James, and Darcy, right, and a drum machine, I believe, right, and that's it on this song.
And it's essentially a live take.
Mm-hmm. And I could sense that. I mean, because I felt very raw, very atmospheric. 3 people playing in the room and a little drum machine, basically back to where you were in middle of 1988, just before Jimmy Chamberlin joined the band.
And what attracted to me, the reason I ended up putting this on the record was because I always felt that in the first 3 albums, because we were so perfectionist-oriented, that we never let the true sort of feeling of the band come across. And I mean this honestly, on a song like Shame, this is how the band really sounds. I mean, without the sort of trying to be perfect, and the basic feel of the band. This is the basic feel of the band with no whitewash.
Mm-hmm. And this sort of answers the question: well, does Billy play all the instruments on the records?
No.
In this case, it's obviously 3 people. Playing together in real time.
Yeah, when it's in tune, it's all me.
That's right. We have let's take a call related to that really quickly before we play this track. Let's go to Layla on line 2.
Hi.
Hey, Layla. We're sort of on point here. You've got a question, I think, related to this.
Yes. My question was, being that Billy is a preeminent songwriter of the band, how has that affected the other members, taking into consideration that James released his solo album, and etc.?
You want to answer this, or?
Can I say one other thing real quick?
Sure.
I used to see you guys when you were 3 bands for $6 at the Metro.
It was $5, but thank you.
Thanks, Layla.
So that's a good. Well, and why not relate it to Shame too? Like, how would you sell the song to James and to Darcy, and what do they contribute? How did it develop?
Well, the first thing I have to, and Greg and I were just talking about this the other day, the band, the Three Pumpkins besides me, have always been so supportive of whatever direction I wanted to go in. There's really never been any question of whatever direction I feel. So I'm very grateful that there's been that sort of support. And it's so difficult to explain because everybody wants things in absolute terms. James's like real genius is he plays these sort of lines that you would never think would go with the song, but once he puts them in there, they can't come out. It's sort of like his way of making sure he's in there. I don't know how he does it, but he plays these lines that you would think, oh, that's not going to work. But then if you ask him to not play it, it's like something's missing. And Darcy has such a sort of subtle. It's really almost sexy. Her feel was always sort of underneath the band, and sometimes you don't realize what somebody contributes until you play with somebody else. And Melissa's a much more sort of almost like a guitar bass player. She plays more on top and plays more aggressively, and it lends itself to certain songs. But other songs, it's like you really realize how Darcy made the rock part of the band sort of sit in a strange way, and we call it the swim. I'm always on top. James sort of swims between top and lazy, and Darcy was always a bit lazy, and that was that sort of pumpkin swirl sound. And I think you really hear it on this track, even though it's a drum machine. You really hear the swim in the band.
Mm-hmm. The other thing I liked about this song was the lyrics were so direct. I thought you took a major step with your lyrics on the Adore record. I don't think I've ever told you this, but I thought those opening lines of Sheila still are some of the best things you've ever written. We're not playing that song, but To Sheila I just think was just a marvelous way to begin this record. And right away I thought lyrically, this is poetry. I mean, I thought Sheila was a poetic song, and I think the directness of Shame, it's so simple.
Right.
It's the kind of song that people aren't going to forget because of that simplicity. And I think sometimes before in the past you may have gotten in trouble because it was a little more convoluted, a little bit more oblique.
And I'll tell you something, since you're such a fan of this song. I've never. I mean, people close to me know, but I actually wrote this song for Michael Hutchence. I knew him a little bit, and his death really affected me very deeply. It was around this period of time, and particularly not just because I knew him personally and I thought he was a lovely person, but I was also particularly horrified by how, because he sort of didn't fall into the cool celebrity thing, how his death and his contribution to music was minimized. It showed up in like how little he was written about in Rolling Stone, and sort of the way he was written about. It horrified me that his life was reduced to, well, he wasn't selling as many records as he used to, so maybe that had something to do with it. I just found that so horrible, and it made me think of him and how him being such a beautiful person was so much more important than anything I was reading about this man, and it really affected me. And so this song is really what I would have said to him if I had the chance to say something to him before he passed away.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's cool. Great story. Shame on XRT Sound Opinions. All right, that's Shame by the Smashing Pumpkins from the Adore album. That's the record Greg Kot, would take to my desert island from the Pumpkins. And
I'm going to do mine a little later. It's not going to be Hummer.
That's right. Jim DeRogatis is going to have his desert island. And Jimmy, got a question for you. The one album that you do not play on, was it tough for you to listen to this record, or know that it was out there and you weren't on it?
No, not at all.
Really?
No, I mean, there were days, hours, maybe minutes of uncomfortability, but for the most part, no. I mean, there was no. It's not like we automatically hated each other. I mean, it was a situation, and I think love definitely adhered on both sides through the thick and thin. So I was glad they came out with another record, because if they wouldn't have, I would have felt terrible.
I think the thing that moved me the most that he ever said to me about it was when he heard the record. he didn't feel bad so much as he felt bad because he heard me struggling, and he knew that if he'd been there, that it wouldn't have been such a struggle. And that, to me, is the most moving thing that he said about it.
Well, October '98, you were back in the band. The band agreed to make at least one more record together and to bring Jimmy Chamberlin back into the band. And
now we're breaking up.
And then at the same time you agreed to break up, we've got Billy Corgan's announcement on K-Rock in L.A. earlier this year.
It is 106.7 K-Rock, KROQ. I am still Tammy Heidi, and joining us here in the K-Rock studios, Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins. How are you, Billy?
Fine, thank you, Tammy.
Okay, so the website kept alluding to some big announcement or something.
Right. It's true. I'm here to finally announce the band is going to break up at the end of this year.
Why?
That's a very good question. We felt that before we even started this album that we'd sort of come to the end of our sort of road, emotionally, spiritually, musically. So we wanted to make one more album together. That was the intention of getting Jimmy back in the band, was to make one more album and sort of end on a good note, between each other, more importantly than the public part of it.
Yeah, well, that was the official announcement, and of course the gnashing, the crying, the outcry, the message, the Smashing Pumpkins website full of. I think there was even a caller on the K-Rock show that was just crying on the air, saying, "You can't do this." And speaking of weeping and wailing, I even talked to Bono of U2 a few days ago, and asked him.
Was he crying?
He was. Well, you can hear for yourself what Bono had to say about the Pumpkins breaking up.
I'm kind of sad. And a bit cross. Because I just think that I was just reminded whilst I watched them play how much their music kind of moved me. If that's not too sissy a word. No. But really, I really found, and he has that sort of fetal sort of scream and indeed look. and yet you find yourself beneath all the thrash and the sort of search and destroy metal. You find these beautiful kind of snapshots that are very emotional. And I kind of just got cross. I just thought, what the fuck are you guys doing? Letting this go. And because this is a real group. They really balance each other.
Man, you've made it. I don't care about it. Saturday Night Live. I'll say it again. What's that joke about? You get to heaven and that's God. He just thinks he's Bono. And I mean, and Bono's cross at you.
He's upset. So how do you? Okay, let's
upset
address
Bono.
it, guys. What's going on here? Why the breakup now? Obviously, the band is not going downhill in a toilet artistically. You've just put out 2 records that are as good, I think, as anything you've done. Machina and Machina 2. You are not losing it. Artistically, you're still selling out arenas around the world. People want to pay a couple of $100,000 or a couple $1,000 to see you at Metro. Not a couple 100,000 yet, but so what's going on? Why now?
I just think we're really scared of becoming like cartoon characters, and I mean, even more than we are already.
More than the Simpsons
pretty much
made
dug
you.
our own cartoon grave already. But that whole too old to rock really starts holding a lot of weight when you wake up in the morning and your back hurts and your hands are bleeding and you're too old and it hurts and you're complaining like a grumpy old man. And it's just it's embarrassing. It's like it's like being 60 and running around trying to
Is it a simple case of let's do a Jordan here and win a championship and then leave?
I think grace has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah. I think one component of what he's saying that we haven't talked about, but I think this is the right context to talk about it in, is that you find a moment where you can no longer balance the past and the future, and we've been lucky enough to make in people's minds. It's not just this is not my mind, but in people's minds, we've made 2 seminal records for our generation, Siamese Dream and Melancholy. Whether I agree with that or not is not important. This is what most people feel that are our fans. And at some point, we cannot balance our future against our past. The Pumpkins really is a search and destroy unit, and quite frankly, we don't really want to have much to do with the past. That's not a disrespect to the past. That's more out of respect to what the band means to us. And there comes a point where the weight and pressure of trying to maintain some sort of profile against a ghost becomes almost unbearable. And more than anything, that has a lot to do with where we're coming from in our sort of everyday life. There's sort of grand aesthetic aspects of it, and yes, we want to sort of put the horse down gracefully, and yes, we feel that there's more music to be made. But it's sort of like, we just want to pull the parachute cord before and not be pulling it after.
Yeah.
So better we pull it before. If it's 4 years or 1 year or 1 month, we don't know that number.
But Billy, you're an astute student of rock history. Mm-hmm. You know that nobody stays broken up. Black Sabbath didn't. Led Zeppelin didn't. Page and Plant came back and they call it Page
Sex
and Plant,
Pistols didn't.
but they don't even bring Jones out and they stink. And can you say definitively you'll never get back together and play the songs from Siamese Dream again?
I can say. I'll use the Jordan percentage
because we're going to haunt you 15 years down the road.
No, we have discussed this, and I can say pretty definitively that you'll probably never see us live again. I don't think it's completely out of the question that the band would make more music, whether under a different name or obviously through different sort of solo incantations. Whether we would ever be called the Smashing Pumpkins again, I would highly doubt it. And if we did, it would not be a live. It would not be a live unit because literally we're just not interested in playing that music for the next 10 years of our lives. We just don't want to do it anymore because the music was made with a spirit and an energy, and at some point it becomes disrespectful to play that music without the spirit and the energy.
Well, we agree, but have there been heroes of yours that have let you down by coming back and doing it?
Or I've hung on too long.
See, I'm really, the funny thing is I have the complete opposite opinion as a fan. I have no problems as a fan watching a band, beyond its prime.
Really?
Not at all. I have no problem.
Because it hurts. When I see somebody who does it well, Sabbath did it well. You were at those shows.
Yeah.
That All-State Arena show was a great show. But then you see something else, that doesn't. Wire is a band I love. Okay, Wire sucks today, pretty much.
What I will say is that the bands that I respect, that I think have a certain level of genius, I'm willing to go to see that one shred of genius, and I'm willing to accept that I put myself in that situation. There's been times where I've been pleasantly surprised that my thought is completely wrong. Cheap Trick being one of them.
Yeah.
I've seen Cheap Trick 25 times in the past 4 years, and they're amazing every time. I cannot believe how good they are. They sound better now than they did 25 years ago. I just watched a Budokan concert from '78, and they sound better now than they sounded in 1978. So, they prove me wrong all the time. It's just the band has its own sort of religion inside the band, and it really came from the 4 members. It's really impossible to explain the dichotomy of that. That's why, in some ways, I wanted him to answer the question, because he can speak sort of from another end of it.
Well, one of the things you said in that interview we did a few days ago, Billy, was that you felt that when the band stopped fighting and all was good within the band, that's when you knew it was going to break up. I posed that same question to James Iha a few days later, and he says, I don't agree with that at all. He says, I
don't
agree. Yeah.
James is the least confrontational person you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
James doesn't think that fighting solves anything. I'm part Italian, and I come from a family that fights. If you want something, you sort of throw down and you air it, and then it's done. And that's just the way I was raised. So, I don't know. It's I don't want to speak against James. I don't want to speak against anybody's thought on it. I just know that in my mind, if you want something bad enough, you're willing to sort of throw your body against it. And at some point, I think we became gun shy, whether out of caring too much or knowing each other too much. We just don't want. I mean, listen, the guy sitting next to me is the closest musical relationship I've ever had in my life, and there's things we cannot talk about, and that there's no huge revelation in that. There's territory we just don't want to go into. It's just too painful, and at some point, it's easier for me to like lay off on Jimmy about something personal so that his life isn't bad, even though it might make for a better musical moment. Or if I realize he's having a bad day, it's not important to me whether he plays the right drum part in section 8B7. I'd rather have Jimmy have a better day. At 24, I didn't care. He was going to play the right drum part, and I didn't care if he was going to have a bad day. So maybe that's, maybe we care too much, and we've crossed that line as a unit. I don't know. But
well, it really is such a cliche, but it's one of those things that's absolutely true, that a band is like a marriage. You're in a long-term relationship now, and with the marriage, you're supposed to be caring about each other. With the band, you're not necessarily. You're supposed to be challenging each other. Yeah. It's these cross purposes.
Yeah, and it's things that built up over time. I take a lot of the blame in the sense that by being sort of overbearing, at some point maybe people stop challenging me, so I take their not challenging as not being aggressive when it's just they're like, well, why do I want to challenge? I already know what the answer is going to be. You get into that sort of thing. You get into assumptive behaviors. You
can't surprise each other anymore.
Well, Jimmy, what about the fighting, making for a better creative situation?
Well, I think it does in some respects. I think the tension in the band is definitely reflected in a lot of the music, and certainly on Siamese Dream and early Melancholy stuff. But it's a very tiring way to live, and it's a very taxing way to exist every day. Cutting friction with scissors in the air because there's so much tension and everybody's wound so tight.
The Butch Vig words again. They were not a bunch of happy campers.
That's like Sound Opinions every Tuesday night, actually.
But it makes for great geek type songs, like stuff like that. I mean, that all feeds into that. But you can't be like that all the time. It's just it'll kill you.
But you guys, I still think you guys made great art. You didn't need that tension. You guys said you were getting along really great, and here you made 2 fantastic records.
Yeah, you guys are absolutely wrong. You made better records when you liked each other. The last 3 records are the best things you've done.
I would agree with you, but the thing is that, and I know I'm going to offend somebody when I say this. Spiritually, the world right now is still responding to an old archetype and an old sort of energy. And when the Pumpkins sat in that old energy, it was easier to understand the Pumpkins, and it was easier to understand the music we were making. The music we've been making for the last 4 to 5 years is of a higher spiritual level, more sophisticated, and will make more sense down the road when the culture passes into that next phase of sort of maturity. I believe that very strongly. I believe in 20 years, 30 years, somebody will look back and see Siamese Dream as a somewhat immature record and see Machina as the mature, as the maturation of that sort of thought.
That's I'm spot on by saying that right now, because I'll hold that rabbit. Listen, we wouldn't have made those records if we didn't believe that those records were better records. Interesting.
And that's the ego of the Smashing Pumpkins. We believe each successive record has meant more and said more. It may not be as demonstrative and obvious and get the mosh pit going, but we don't care.
Right.
And that's the difference. So maybe we paid the price culturally. Maybe we paid the price in America. But as I said to Greg the other day, the past 2 records has only made our band a bigger band around the rest of the world.
Right.
So is the rest of the world wrong, or is America wrong? I don't know. I'm American. I understand it, but I don't agree. So, that's it.
All right.
What can we do?
We're going to come back to some more of that, and we're going to give away some tickets to Metro, right? Which is going to be really exciting.
Yeah. Yes.
The hottest ticket in town all year for sure. We've got some other stuff. I'm going to play My Desert Island Jukebox. We're going to talk about some of the great myths of the Smashing Pumpkins, try to debunk them, and we're going to talk about the future, which is a really exciting thing. But we're going to save that for last. So stay tuned to XRT Sound Opinions with Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin. We'll be right back.
We're back with the Smashing Pumpkins by the city, by the lake, Chicago. It's XRT Sound Opinions with Greg Cott and Jim DeRogatis, and we are very pleased to have Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin of the Smashing Pumpkins here.
Thanks for letting us dig a deeper hole.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
you know,
you guys got nothing to lose now. As of Sunday, it's not going to matter anyway.
Yeah.
Final shows this week for those who have been living in a hole. Tomorrow night at the United Center, and Saturday at Metro. And we want to talk about an area that, well, let's face it, Billy Corgan and the press, the media of the world. It's been an amazing relationship.
Well, we're going to take that call first, aren't we?
Yeah. But first,
let's warm up.
Okay, all right.
This poor guy's been holding for 2 hours.
And we apologize
and it's a
for
good call.
a lot of people who have been calling.
Let's do that. It's Jeff, right?
Yeah, do I get the free tickets?
No.
No. You just said I've been sitting on hold forever. You're killing me, bud.
Ask Corgan. You want to give this guy free tickets?
Yeah, but Jeff, you get to ask Billy Corgan a question or Jimmy Chamberlin.
Well, I can ask him a question, but could I also get the free tickets?
Well,
I'm digging, guys. I'm digging.
Let's hear the question first.
All right. The question I had that I was really curious about was with Metallica kicking all those people off the internet with the Napster incident and all that, and you guys embracing the internet. What was your opinion with those guys booting them off? I mean, I was one of the guys that got booted off, and it really pissed me off because I'm a huge fan of Metallica. I'm a huge fan of you guys, and I mean, I'm thankful that you guys put that on the internet. I was able to download new songs and all, and it's great. But I just thought that was just a big flaw on their part. I mean, what's your guys' call on that?
Right. Well, if I can dial it back, say 3-4 months ago, before Napster sort of made their deal with BMG, the basic sort of Metallica versus Napster argument. The sad thing is that nobody wants to come out and say it. It's all about money. And in there's an idealism, which is that ultimately music is going to be like TV. It's going to be mostly for free. You'll be able to get like cable or whatever and choose your services. But for the most part, there's going to be a lot of free music. And I do believe that free music is not necessarily an inherently bad thing. I also believe that freeing up the music system by which things are delivered will hopefully make better music, and artists that deserve to be heard will get a chance and don't have to be run through the normal MTV pipeline, etc., etc. Metallica's intellectual arguments were just basically masking money arguments, which I found kind of offensive. They helped sort of stir the public into the idea that there was a righteousness here when there really wasn't. Now that Napster has sort of gotten in bed with BMG and is obviously going to become a sort of major player in the money sense, then obviously some of that idealism has gone out the window. So that argument's not as doesn't hold as much as it did, say, 4 months ago. But I still believe that there's an idealism there, and I believe the fans are going to create the idealism whether anybody wants them to or not.
So now, Billy, the skeptic says, and Greg and I are both agree with you, but the skeptic will say, that's easy for you to say, Billy Corgan, you've made your millions.
Yeah.
If you were starting out today in a new band, and sure, you can put your music on the web, you can give it away for free, people will download it, but how are you going to make a living? And you deserve to make a living if you're talented.
Well, let me say this. First off, when we started the band, we didn't care about making money, so it wouldn't have bothered us. And I think my argument is buoyed by the fact that someone like me has the most to lose. I have the most to lose by a system like Napster because it basically it doesn't guarantee the revenue streams like it does now. My point is, and this is where I have confidence as an artist, outside of the musical argument, is I believe that my music is generally better than most people's music, so I believe in whatever system you throw at me, I'll be able to deal with whatever comes at me, and things will work themselves out. There's other ways to make money in the music business, but I think the most important thing is getting music into people's hands. Now in America, we're a very affluent country, so we like to think of things all, basically, how much does my CD cost in this? When you travel the world and you see kids in Brazil, it's like basically a month's salary to come to a concert. Mm-hmm. You go to a country like Korea, which is not necessarily a rich country. We've been to Thailand. We've been to countries where it's like $5 is a lot of money to these kids. An album over there will generally be the equivalent of $20 to $25 US for a single album. You get a different sense of what it means to get music into these people's hands outside of the economic structure. So I'm an artist first, and I want people to hear the music, and we'll work everything else out later. So I think my biggest thing was when I saw perfectly intelligent people getting on the side of continuing to keep the power in the music company's hands, not realizing they were selling themselves to a deeper form of slavery than musicians are already in, because basic music contracts are indentured servant contracts, masking is something else. movie stars have.
He sounded like Prince.
But it's true. Movie stars have more rights in the state of California, which is where most of the music business takes place, than the musicians do.
Mm-hmm.
And most people, unfortunately, are not hip to how deep it actually goes. There's a lot of collusion in the music industry, and there's a lot of weird stuff that goes on. And if it's, I go back. No one under 30 is going to remember. But I go back to the player Curt Flood, who stood up for free agency. It ruined his career, but he stood up for something because it was the right thing to do. And what I tried to do publicly, at least to a point, was stand up for the right thing to do, even though it impacts me. One music company executive told me that because of the Pumpkins' high profile on the internet, that things like Napster and sort of online trading on Machine of One, our commercially released album, probably cost the band 300,000 copies. So do I get upset because it cost us 300,000 copies and the music industry thinks their album's not selling, so MTV doesn't play our video? Or do I get excited because it means somebody out there's listening to music? So I'd rather go with this sort of higher ground.
Mm-hmm. You're listening to WXRT AM and FM in Chicago. We're here with Jimmy Chamberlin and Billy Corgan of Smashing Pumpkins. I'm Greg Kot with Jim DeRogatis, and we have a little snippet of tape we want to play you to sort of introduce the next segment of this discussion.
Wide-ranging
It's from 1993. It's Billy Corgan on the stage of
an XRT
Power
show.
Records. An XRT show, as a matter of fact. From the XRT archives. Let's hear what...
he was being good this night. You didn't call me a fat bleeping...
This is what Billy Corgan had to say about an article that Jim DeRogatis wrote in the Chicago Sun-Times.
Hi. Well, you're all in such a rockin' mood. It's like, I wish I had my distortion pedal. Well, we don't. So...
We are simply men with acoustic guitars.
We are here to open ourselves bare for you all to see. And hey, by the way, as long as I'm thinking about it, I hope no one reads the Sun-Times, because whoever wrote that Sun-Times article is an idiot, and that's exactly the reason. That's exactly the reason why we've had so many problems in Chicago, is because of shoddy journalism like that. So keep your eyes and ears open and look beyond what you read, because not everything that everyone writes is truth. So screw the Sun-Times.
Well, that's about as blunt as you can get.
That was almost Nelson Mandela-like.
That was free Nelson
I
Mandela.
moved the nation.
It's quite a speech.
Screw the Sun-Times. You look up on the web. I'm in all the Pumpkins facts, FAQ, frequently asked questions, because they all want to know, why was Billy so ticked off at this guy, Jim DeRogatis? Because there's all these bootlegs out there. And I'm not saying this to be self-serving. We thought we'd broaden it out. Because I had made the cardinal sin of giving Siamese Dream 3 stars out of 4.
You still don't know I got upset, so we won't go into it. But it wasn't that. No, it wasn't that.
I didn't say where you lived. I wasn't Chicago.
No, but I have to correct you. It had nothing to do with the 3 out of 4 star review.
I made fun of your lyrics.
No, I don't want to get into it.
All right.
Well, the wounds are healed.
All right.
The scars have gone away.
That's true.
Let's just move on.
No, I honestly don't. I honestly don't know why you're upset, and I don't care. That's irrelevant. What is interesting is your relations with critics in general and the press.
Right.
Rarely have I seen, and Greg, you can back me up on this, rarely have I seen an artist get so perturbed by things that people wrote. I mean, you seem to me to read everything.
I don't think it's rare. I will say this. I mean, Kurt Cobain, cut me off for writing an article that was completely the truth. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so it happens a lot. But I think there isn't...
No, it doesn't happen a lot.
The relationship... I think... Limp Bizkit is banning us from their shows.
Yeah, but still, we can count on one hand. How many bands do we
Corgan's
cover
not the only guy that's done this, but what's interesting is the relationship between rock musicians, bands, and the press, and it's not really a good one. It never really has been. Why is that? I mean, what do we miss about you guys that gets you so?
Or what is it about critics that have gotten under your skin? Because apparently, there's a list at Metro of people who aren't allowed in. Still. There's still large segments of the reviewing population, because we have this on good authority that the list for writers and publications not allowed in is 4 times longer than the list of people who are allowed in. And I say this at risk of getting myself uninvited again.
No, you're invited.
Thank you.
First you got to answer the simple question.
Through gritted teeth. Yeah.
I'll try to go to the beginning. I won't go to the whole story, but the beginning was we sort of felt like people didn't quite get where we were coming from the beginning, And as you know, oftentimes when a band gets a tag from the beginning, it never leaves. It sort of just hangs. And we didn't like our initial tag. So over and over again, we sort of fought against that. So that sort of created a basic bed of ill will. Then second album comes out, and it's just like, but now we've got juice, Now we're selling records, so we're basically saying F you to everybody. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And as far as being personally bothered by it, I don't know. It's pathological, I guess. I just try not to read stuff because at this point I'm obviously a cartoon character, and as I've pointed out many times, I mean, I think the list of accomplishments for the band and for myself are pretty decent, and most articles, most questions don't focus on any of those things. They focus on things which obviously make for good press. So I've just kind of gone with it these days. I think the times that the two of us have talked, and me and Greg just talked, I'm much more relaxed about the whole subject. I mean, people are going to say what they're going to say, they're going to write what they're going to write. I should just worry about the music. And
have there been
else.
things that critics have written that have given you positive insight?
Absolutely. I think some of the lyrical sort of critique in the first two albums was insightful. Some of the sort of kind of chiding the band a bit for being too all over the place, I think at times was appropriate. But again, always I thought I always say if the critique is within context, if you let's say you have your average normal year 2000 metal band, and that metal band makes an album of basically halfway decent ham-fisted rock metal songs. The accomplishment of doing that halfway decent thing that's been already done 4,000 times, to me that's not such an accomplishment. So when I see 3 stars, out of 4 or 3 out of 5, basically a decent album, I think, well, how hard is it to do that? If a band's basically gambling their whole world to make an album, even if they fail, you have to sort of put it in context, say, well, at least they're trying to do something. I don't think they really managed to get what they're trying to do, but it's obviously they're trying to do something. What so made me angry about the Adore Press in particular was, in Melancholy, we were the biggest band in the world, arguably, and for a band to risk everything by making this record, which was very dark and very introspect, most of the reviews were just basically like, this is just horrible. I don't understand this. And then the same guys who wrote bad reviews of our other albums were basically saying, oh, they used to be great, now they're really bad. So we didn't even get the good reviews to begin with. Now they're sort of giving us bad reviews and pretending that we got good reviews to make themselves seem bad. That's very hard to deal with. So whatever. No one wants to hear anybody complain. I understand that, and I just try to keep it to myself.
Well, the thing that Greg and I are fascinated with, the reason we do Sound Opinions is, I mean, if there's one problem in rock and roll today, it's not that there's too much smart back and forth and opinion sharing about music. I mean, how many people care enough? It seems like the criticism world has been reduced to, literally, when I was at Rolling Stone, there was a saying, 3 stars is never having to say you're sorry. And that was the copy editors had that engraved on the wall. And you read Entertainment Weekly and everything is, bye, A+, A-, and there's nothing on the line.
Sort of a little bit on the tangent, I feel that the lack of deep critical review in America particularly is really hurting American music. Because it's not so much the bands that need the critique, it's the fans that need the critique to create the context by which they can further appreciate the music so they can separate out the music. And this is the difference, somebody has to say, you may not know who PJ Harvey is, but here's why PJ Harvey matters. Here's where her influence comes from, and here's where her influence lies.
Here's how to listen to her.
But you're also assuming that the press has any kind of clout at all in the United States. I contend that the press has become such a marginalized part of the discussion that it's all about who's getting banged on MTV or radio that day, and that's really what's selling records. And the critics really don't have much of a say in.
But that gets into
whether a record gets sold or not.
A cart versus the horse syndrome.
That's true.
It's at the cart before the horse. Again, I don't want to idealize, but it seems to me if there was a greater depth in critical review, the musicians do read these. They would try to make better records because they wouldn't want to be burned publicly. They wouldn't want to look bad, and at the same time, kids would have a chance to sort of separate the difference between, the Sgt. Peppers of the world and Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Right.
And what we have right now is we have plenty of Paul Revere and the Raiders and not a lot of Sgt. Peppers, but kids wouldn't know the difference because they wouldn't even know that that's even there to be had.
That's a good point. We got a question about MTV, which plays into this. Keith, welcome to Sound Opinions.
Hi.
What's your question?
Well, I heard a while back that Billy walked out of some MTV performance, and I never really saw it myself or heard it, and I was just wondering what the story behind that was. Maybe something that some critic at MTV had said, or what happened.
No, I don't know what he's talking about. I mean,
never would. What about relations with MTV in general? Because clearly, I mean, they've gone, from the days when they were slamming your videos, this Total Request Live MTV is a completely different animal.
Yeah. Actually, I think the relationship is good, and you just have to recognize it's a business, and they're going to go with what's going to sell the most cookies, and they've decided right now that boy bands are going to sell the most cookies. The minute they decide that they're not, they're going to be off them quicker than you can say New Kids on the Block. So this is the way it works, And how can we complain? We had our moment. It helped us sell records. So, I can't put it down. I can't watch it. I don't understand the content, and I think there's always room. I miss that they had a show like Alternative Nation where there was room to at least see a Flaming Lips video or somebody like that. I think you need that depth. You always need that little bit of edge. If you lose that, like alternative radio, when alternative radio loses its edge and doesn't play that sort of fringe aspect, everybody suffers.
Yeah.
Even the mainstream bands suffer. They need that. You always need the rock and roll edge to give everything credibility and validity. And if you don't have that, it just becomes like cotton candy.
What do you think about alternative radio now? I mean, that's a bigger letdown than MTV. MTV was always about just selling cars,
I'll think alternative radio is in the dubious position of having to try to live up to, just like us, a rare moment in time where everything was sort of overly inflated, and now they're sort of living in the shadow of that, and they're in an impossible position. Particularly if you look at some of what would be the core artists today, they don't have 4 or 5 singles deep like the Pumpkins or Pearl Jam did to carry a radio station for a year. So they're in a very difficult situation.
You're listening to XRT Sound Opinions. We're on with Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin of Smashing Pumpkins. Let's take a couple of quick calls. People have been hanging on. Let's go to Michael on line 3. Michael, got a question for Billy and Jimmy. Hello, Michael.
Yes.
You're there.
Billy, who is your favorite critic, and what did they say that really got through to you?
Well, the person I would say I have the best relationship with would be David Fricke from Rolling Stone, because I think that he sort of gets the band in the classic rock context that the band thinks of itself personally in. I know most people don't see that, but we view ourselves as a classic rock band. So he sort of comes from that mentality, and he sort of has those right sort of understandings. So the questions come from that area, and the answers sort of seem to relate to that area. And it always ends up kind of putting across the version of the band that the band feels. Other people see different aspects, other people lean on different areas, but I think he's always presented the view of the band that the band feels about the band.
Thanks, Michael. Let's go to Ramona on line 1. Ramona, you've got a question for Billy or Jimmy?
Yeah, it's more so for Billy, I guess. Hey, guys, how are you doing?
Hi.
Hey. Oh, my God, it's incredible to talk to you. I'm actually shaking sitting here. I didn't think I would be. I just wanted to know, you were talking about how you've become this kind of cartoon character, and even if you go away for a year after the band ends and you kind of hide in the shadows, how are you going to get away from that? And how, I don't know if it's important to you, but I mean, even if I think anything you try at this point, somebody's going to come out and they're going to they're just going to lambaste you.
Right.
So how do you get away from that? It's the Police, they broke up at the height of their career, and then Sting came out and did his own thing, and a lot of people hated it. A lot of people hate him even more now,
Right.
How does that, how are you going to prevent that happening to you?
Well, you can't, and I think that's a little bit of maturity in my life and a little bit of stability in my personal relationships have given me the strength to realize that to be an artist is to always incite a certain amount of emotion. Particularly me, I seem to get people good and angry. So I've accepted that, whatever I do musically, 50% of the Pumpkin fans are going to hate it. I just know it. They're just going to hate it because it's not going to be the Smashing Pumpkins. So it doesn't matter what I do. So I know this already, but I have to have faith that time and good music and good energy will sort of carry me through. If you go back and read some of the reviews of the early Pumpkins shows, of the early Pumpkins music, it wasn't as sort of reverential as it's become. And we knew that we were a great band back then, even if nobody else agreed with us. And time has sort of been on our side. So having been through that experience, I see the same things happening. I think time will be on the side of the last Pumpkins, projects, Adore and Machina, And I think time is on the side of the Pumpkins. Particularly, we have a very deep catalog of music. We recorded way more music than most of our contemporaries, and I think that will really serve us over time.
We were going to talk about the future later, but since Ramona just kind of steered us in that direction, I mean, so there's rumors that you and Jimmy are going to do this progressive rock. Now Greg and I know you far too well and know that when something like that, much like Adore was the techno record or whatever, that whatever the little catchphrase hallmark is probably going to be completely much deeper than that. But so this rumor of instrumental progressive rock, you said that in Greg's article the other day with Mike Garson from Bowie's band, right?
Right.
Yeah.
What's that about? Where are you going next?
It's basically just a chance to do something that we've always wanted to do and never really had the time or could. I mean, with the breakup of the band, it kind of frees us to not have to uphold this thing anymore. I mean, we don't have to be the Smashing Pumpkins. We can actually go just screw off and play 70s jazz fusion and be self-indulgent.
Wasn't that a scene in Spinal Tap?
Yeah, it's like simple melodies intertwined.
We're incredibly on point for the plot so far, and we have the exploding drummer. We have every.
So now is Chris Holmes of Yum Yum going to be in the Rick Wakeman role? Because you can't be a prog rock band without keyboards.
You got to have a guy with a cape playing the keyboards.
Well, we got the sword.
Yeah.
I don't know about the cape yet.
Is that a phallic reference or something?
We've seen him brought out the rock god in waiting in Chris, so you have to see it for yourself.
Oh, he's been hoping to be a pumpkin for years.
We got to take a break. We got to take a break. But Billy and Jimmy from the Pumpkins are going to be giving away some tickets to the Metro show after we take this break on XRT Sound Opinions.
I'll miss you, Pumpkins, but I just can't share your bleak world view. I've got too much to live for.
We envy you, Homer. All we have is our music, our legions of fans, our millions of dollars, and our youth.
Woohoo! Let's all go out and buy fur coats. I want to walk in humidor.
Welcome back to Sound Opinions on XRT. Greg Cott with Jim DeRogatis and Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin of Smashing Pumpkins are here. And Billy and Jimmy want to give away some tickets to their final show Saturday at Metro. Billy, take it away.
The hottest ticket in town this year.
I'm just reading what Norm told me to read. Smashing Pumpkins farewell show, Metro, this Saturday night. These tickets sold out instantly. Right now, we're giving away 2 pairs of free tickets to see the Pumpkins' final show. To win, please answer this relatively simple question. The question is, name one movie that the Pumpkins had a song in. If you know the right answer, call right now, 773-777-8881. 773-777-8881. We'll give away a free pair of front row tickets to see the Smashing Pumpkins' final show in Metro Saturday night. To the first 2 people with the right answer, starting with caller number 9. Phone number again, 773-777-8881.
Billy, you can only win 1 pair of tickets per person. You must be 21 or older to attend. Tickets provided by the Smashing Pumpkins themselves. Free tickets to a bona fide historical rock and roll event. It has to be XRT, Chicago's finest rock.
Thank you, Matt Spiegel.
All right, Sean's going to do that. We'll put those people up on the...
Jim, you ought to...
we're going to make these people nice.
Can we talk to the winners? Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk to the people who got the right answer as Sean feels those calls. Meanwhile, Jim...
3 possible answers, right?
That's right.
3 possible answers.
Right.
Jim, that I know of. That's a disclaimer, Norm.
We never know what some unscrupulous people might be doing out there.
That's right.
We're probably in some weird Jean-Luc Godard movie or something, that we wouldn't even know about.
Yeah.
Some porno flick.
Usually,
might have lifted a song, and
that's the beautiful thing about fans. They usually know more about you than you yourself know about you. But Jim, we got to do your Desert Island Jukebox. What song would you bring to the Desert Island from the Smashing Pumpkins catalog?
All right, I'll tell you. I got a definition here of the word elegy. It's a beautiful word. It's a poem or song of lament and praise for the dead, as Shelley's Adonis. And the song I wanted to choose was exactly the same song from same album that you chose.
That's kind of scary.
I think it's interesting. It's my favorite Pumpkins album, although I love the 2 Machina records as well. as I said, I think that they're brilliant efforts. You guys are going out at the top of your game. The song I wanted to play was For Martha. And it's extraordinary on a couple of levels. Musically first, what a beautiful intro! That grand piano. I gather it's you sitting alone in the studio playing a grand piano. There's very little guitar at
He's
first.
nodding.
And
oh yeah, sorry.
The song builds. We were just talking about progressive rock, where you guys are going. Again, Jimmy, sorry, you're not on this record, not on this song.
No, but I like the song a lot too, and we're actually going to play it at the Metro, I think.
Oh, very good. And Matt Chamberlin plays drums from Soundgarden. Does a good job, but it's mainly just Billy. Are the other guys even on this song?
No, it's actually this also. The music's a live take.
Okay.
I mean, there's overdubs, but the bed track, like the piano take, it's one take all the way through, and I was crying, like afraid I was going to make one mistake. Yeah.
So it's this incredible song that builds, like, I think, like the greatest progressive rock. There's a section in particular, But for the Grace of Love, that section that comes in, that really reminds me of Genesis circa like nursery crime. Those incredible...
You're going to make Jimmy laugh now.
Ouch. Just big... No, and I love Genesis. Just big, beautiful, sort of stately, grandiose. And then, of course, the guitar solo is just absolutely extraordinary. And that's you, right? Or is that
That's
you?
me, yeah.
It's just this overdriven, fuzz tone kind of guitar. It reminds me a little bit of Robert Fripp. It kind of that EBO sound, that huge sound where the guitar is almost tubular. Mike Oldfield always played that way as well. Again, I'm dropping a lot of progressive rock influences, but it's a rock song, and it's also at the same time
laying the groundwork for their new career after this.
I'm telling you, if they go in this direction, I'm going to be very happy camper. But again, like Greg said with Shame, a lyrical directness that I think was lacking before, and you really started to, I think, put yourself on the line, expose yourself, take some chances. The lyrics are very, very simple. The lines as they were broken down on the lyric sheet and on the website, are very. Whenever I run to you, lost one. It's never done. Just hanging on. Your past has let me be. Returning as if dreams shattered as belief. It's a song about loss, and it got out there on websites and in interviews that it was about your mother who died of cancer. And I tried to think, rock critics sometimes, then they know the backstory, they let that color the music. I think that the emotion in the song and the longing, that elegiac quality comes through, even if you don't know that it's about your mom. It could be loss of a time in your life, of an emotion, of any sort of loved one. The fact that you later learn that it is about your mother just makes it all the more poignant. But it's just a beautiful, beautiful song in any regards, and it has that key hallmark of what I think makes the Pumpkins great, which is the beauty versus the ugliness. And the ugliness is that incredible distortion guitar, and the beauty, of course, is the grand piano and this heartfelt vocal and these very simple, very poetic words. I think it's Pumpkins at the finest. So, am I wrong?
No, thank you. It means a lot, because it's not easy to write a song about your mother. And my mother didn't die under the best circumstances. She was diagnosed with cancer, and 5 months later was dead, and it was very painful, physically painful for her. And this, not to sort of be overly simplistic, but this is why I'm an artist, because to try to sum up the way I feel, I couldn't in a million Sundays tell you how I feel, but this song really describes the way I felt, because at the same time that I was really, really hurt that my mother was gone, I was so amazed at her courage and her strength through her illness, and how at peace she seemed to be with it. So at peace that she encouraged me to stay on tour and not worry about her and stuff like that. And really, really heavy kind of stuff. And to take something that's so... there's so much dirt and sort of blood and tears and all that, and to sort of mold it into something that takes me instantly back to that time. That's really why I play.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, this is For Martha from Adore by the Smashing Pumpkins. For Martha by the Pumpkins. Beautiful track.
Thank you. Hard to listen to, though. Hard to play.
I'll bet. And we're going to hear... What do we got about... Well, we got 2 shows left.
Well, the gig starts at...
And, question being, are we going to hear
let you go before then.
We're going to hear some of this stuff on certainly Saturday night, if not tomorrow night. How deep are you guys going to go? Saturday.
Yeah, what do you got planned Saturday? Anything you can hint at?
I'm really remiss to give much away, but it's pretty deep. It's pretty deep.
So it's for the hardcore fans.
We've never practiced this hard. Seriously, I mean, would you agree? I mean,
Yeah, we had a lot. People were crying at rehearsal today.
Because they were playing songs you couldn't remember.
Was there consideration about bringing Darcy back at all for these shows? Not to slight Melissa, who is
it was an idea that was sort of brought up outside of the band, and I don't know. James is still very close to Darcy and still communicates with her regularly. I have no relationship with her at this point, so I don't know what the deal is, but I don't know. I think whatever. I'm not going to say anything. I should just keep my mouth shut.
If she showed up, you think she'd wind up on stage?
There's nothing I would like more, really, for us to publicly sort of end in some sort of harmony. But whether that would mean anything personally, I don't know. That's a whole other subject.
All right. Let's talk to these.
We have at least 2 people
lucky
that
winners
are going to be there to find out whether that happens or not.
I think Billy made their night.
Yeah. Let's go to Joanne.
Hi.
Hi, Joanne.
How you doing? Oh my God, I can't believe I won.
Congratulations.
Oh, I'm shaking.
So the question was 3 movies possible. Which one did you name, Joanne?
Oh, I named Singles.
Okay, but now you don't actually get the tickets unless you can name the other 2. No, just kidding. Just kidding. Do you know what the other 2 are?
Be there for a second.
Do you know what the other 2 are?
The other 2, it's from Batman and Robin. The end is the beginning is the end, and the beginning is the end.
Very
is the beginning.
good.
Absolutely right.
I'm a
The
big
Grammy
fan.
Award winning.
The third one's a tricky one.
The other one's obscure. Do you know? You still get the tickets. It's just
yeah, she's starting to hyperventilate. Don't worry, you won, Joanne.
Thank God.
Don't make her suffer.
Oh.
Tell us, Billy.
It's Ace Ventura.
The Grinch.
I can't believe I'm talking to you guys now. My daughter and I are such big fans.
Oh, fantastic.
And she's going nuts right now.
Is she going to come with you?
Oh, yeah, she's coming with me.
Fantastic.
Yeah, she's 14. She's been a fan since she was in 4th grade. Her brother got her attached.
Cool. Well,
Excellent.
congratulations, Joanne.
Oh, thank you so much.
Let's talk to the other winner.
Hello?
Hello, this is Katura.
Hey, Katura.
Hi. I was going to say Singles, but I know what the other one is, too.
What is it?
Lost Highway.
Very good.
Yay.
Wow. We missed that one, but
It's 4. It's 4. You guys didn't even know.
You win, though. You still win.
The other one was The Saint, but that was
Yeah.
a trick one, right? Because you said it was
Because
only
we just
in
had it's only in the movie. I think it's like he's shaving or something.
And what's the song?
You're All I've Got Tonight.
Oh, right.
Paris.
Wow. So The Saint and
there's probably
Lost
another one
Highway.
I forgot. But
Yeah.
congratulations. Are you excited?
Yes, I'm very excited.
We're pretty excited ourselves.
I had a feeling somehow that I was going to get through, so yay.
One of those kind of girls.
Yep.
All right.
I actually Billy helped my friend and I get into Cure show.
Ah, it's you.
Yes. So.
We meet again.
Yes. Yay.
How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Okay. Well, I'll see you there.
Congrats.
Cool.
All right. We have to take another break, Matt?
Yes, we do.
All right, we're going to come back. We're going to time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. These guys are on the ropes. They're looking haggard. They're
Doing the
They're
rope
saying they
jump.
survived. It's the Ali rope-a-dope, man. It's the 15th round, and we're coming up in the 15th round with Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin.
You don't get this treatment anywhere else.
It's XRT Sound Opinions. We'll be back.
Welcome back to Sound Opinions.
I knew we'd get some Jimmy Chamberlin into
There you
the
go.
mix there.
Let's listen to that some more. Listen to that. Massive.
Bet you didn't know I could play the disco beat.
He's not happy with that track because it doesn't show enough of his chops.
Oh, Jimmy, did you have?
It doesn't allow him to be Tony Williams.
Oh
enough
no!
on that one.
If you listen close, it's chock full of chops.
Did you have, Jimmy? Did you have 1 or 2 covers of Modern Drummer?
2.
I love those Modern Drummer interviews. I'm a longtime subscriber. It's like they're
so
like
geeky.
20-page interviews. So Jimmy, nylon tip sticks or hickory?
Right.
Billy and I are going to take
Chain
a walk
driven
while
pedal
while the drummers talk.
Spring driven pedal
amongst
or
themselves
chain?
here.
But it's so good
Great.
because I never get to talk, shop. I mean,
Nobody ever cares, right?
I don't care.
I love those interviews.
I don't care what gauge strings he uses. He doesn't care what type 6 I
I don't care,
But
Billy.
modern
Do you care?
drummer, that's all they care
That's all they care about. It's
They
wonderful.
want to know.
It's amazing. It's like pornography for drummers.
It is.
It's amazing.
Pornography for drummers. All right, we're wrapping up. We're gonna stick the feet to the fire. We've only got 5 more minutes with Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin as Smashing Pumpkins. I don't think we'll ever talk to them in an official capacity as Smashing
As
Pumpkins,
Pumpkins again?
because as of Sunday they are free agents. So we have to ask them a few tough questions to go out with.
We should play word association because there's no way we can get long answers. The long, complicated answers these deserve. So we'll just throw these at you, and you say the first words that pop into your heads.
Right.
All right, Sharon Osbourne.
Bleep.
Poor Ozzy. Poor Ozzy. Good.
Bleep, bleep.
Good. Bleep, 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 bleep.
That's good. I like that.
You had a great line about her before, off camera. Well, it's on your camera. These guys have been filming you for this documentary. Courtney Love.
Speed racer.
Racer X.
All right,
Chim.
Mayor Daley / Grant Park.
Great mayor. Not his fault. That's all I got to say about that.
All right. What else did we want?
I think
to
he's a great
torture?
mayor. I have no problem with Mayor Daley. It wasn't his decision.
Right.
I think he found out about it when it got
right
when the the bleep hit the fan. So.
Right. All right. Jonathan Melvoin.
Oh my God!
Come on.
Band's breaking up. It's alone.
Greg Cott.
Kenny Aronoff.
Wow.
Great drummer.
Irrepressible. Just guy just is like an energy machine. He just 24 hours a day is just.
Jimmy.
Great drummer. Really nice guy. I love Kenny. He's
Yeah?
a dear friend and great drummer.
Really? Cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
All right.
That's good. Well, that was pretty easy.
That wasn't that tough. Come on.
Well, okay, he's really not.
Yeah. I hate that Pink House's song, Kenny.
I love that.
These
I
guys
love
are in a
that
much
Philly does some
too
surrogate songs.
magnanimous mood here as they're going out. Usually, we expect the.
Can we? I don't know if you have any. Can we touch on the Machina thing just a hair?
Yes, let's talk about Machina too. There was a lot of questions about the two albums, the concept. Big contest on the Pumpkins webpage, which produced some masterly theses. I must say, I read through a bunch of them, and I go,
Now, you and I,
they're way over my head.
And we reviewed these records, and we both are fond of these records. We've talked about these records. We've played these records. I have no idea what the concept is.
Right.
I've not a clue.
Well, quickly in Tommy, you get the concept and then you listen to the music. So it's with the backdrop. On this, I chose to not give you the concept. Let the music sort of pose questions and then put the concept in later. The basic concept that we discussed from the beginning is that the band had become such a perverted vehicle that especially all the talk about what the Pumpkins were after Jimmy left, the way people talked about the band with Jimmy was almost mythic. And it didn't necessarily resemble the band that I'd been in. So when Jimmy came back, we thought, great, well, what we'll do is we'll imitate ourselves. And the Smashing Pumpkins album, Machina 2, will be, in essence, an imitation of the Smashing Pumpkins. It will pervert all the images and all the energy that people think of the band.
I'm sensing some of that Roger Waters Wall thing, where they came out in the masks as the fake Pink Floyd.
No, I definitely,
Sgt. Pepper, too.
I definitely took cues from Tommy, from Ziggy Stardust, from The Wall, because certainly that's my sort of background. It's like by the bed of which I wrote some of these things. But the basic story is like a folk fable, and without getting into the specifics of the story. So the thing that caused so much great confusion was because the band is imitating itself, and obviously I'm singing in character. Some of the lines, because of my caricatured persona in public, were taken as serious lines, which were unbelievable. I point to John Perellis' review in Rolling Stone of Machina, where he says, "How can this guy sing a line like 'If I was dead, would my record sell?'" And that just says that my public persona is so far down the line that people think I'm dumb enough to sing a line like that and actually believe it, that I would put something like that across. I certainly know what that sentiment feels like, but but come on, am I that much of a twisted cookie? So what's been really interesting is
the arched eyebrows on Jimmy over there.
Where's that White Castle at?
So what's been really interesting is in some weird way, sort of what we touched on before with the media, public perception. Instead of running from it like we had for years, instead of fighting against it, we actually sort of went with it. And it seems to have sort of cleared the air for us. It left a lot of good open space for us to work in this past year.
So when you were saying something like Heavy Metal Machine, you're the Pumpkins playing being the Pumpkins. Like almost like let's parody how heavy a song we could make. And call it heavy, and sing heavy.
The Smashing Pumpkins that everybody knew from before would never have done a song like Heavy Metal Machine because it's just too stupid.
Right.
But it doesn't mean we don't enjoy playing music like that and we don't enjoy playing it live. So what we did is we tried to make great music in that sort of vein of stupidity and then add to that the sort of idiocy of both what it means to be a sort of obsessed trap rock star, which I certainly know what that feels like, but also have the overview to say, come on, let me die for rock and roll. There's no way. Not for rock and roll, I'm sorry. And that's the whole thing. It's it's so tragic. Let me die for rock and roll, let me die, save my soul. And what was amazing was to read review after review that actually bought this story. So it basically proved the point that I'm so far down the line, the band's so far down the line, that no one even remembers what we were to begin with.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we should cede it to the listeners since they've been so great during the show. Let's go to John, and John will have the last question for Billy Corgan and Jimmy Chamberlin. John,
put the pressure on the
You're
guy,
on
correct?
Sound Opinions.
Hi, Billy. It's a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you.
I had a question. Now that you guys are over as a band, is there still some unreleased material that you're going to be releasing later on, or is Machine Into the last album?
When I was young, my father was a musician, and my father always used to talk in sort of glowing terms about, I played this great show here, and I did this, and I would say, I would love to hear the tape, and he would say, well, there isn't one. I wish I would have taped. So from the early days of the band, we've been taping, and particularly we've taped the last roughly 400 concerts. Not to mention, we do a lot of recording.
It's the Grateful Dead, man.
Well, we have that sort of extensive library, so we hope in the right sort of spirit and time to make a lot of that stuff available. How, where, who, and how much, and all that. That's sort of will be for later. But the band can live posthumously for a long, long time.
Thanks, John.
Okay, thanks.
Good question.
Well, Ken Sumka is just itching to get in here. I know he's got to do his shift, and
you should blame it on Ken.
Yeah.
We just can't do it anymore.
But 3 hours
we're spent.
3 hours. Jimmy and Billy's eyes have been glazing over several times. Gentlemen, thanks for
they've
giving
got
us
a sound check.
3 hours of your time. You've got a sound check in
2 hours,
18 hours or so, something. 17 hours.
Well,
I think.
don't be writing reviews that I can't hit the high notes tomorrow because you guys wore me down.
It's us. We blew it.
Pumpkins were listless, and no energy.
He talked himself out on Tuesday night in Sound Opinions. We thank you very much, guys, for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was a special treat for our 100th show. Next week we've got the 101st. We're gonna do. We're gonna put ourselves on the line. We're gonna have an open phones. All those questions you've been wondering. Who are those jerks? For 2 years, been ranting and raving on XRT. All the questions that you've always wanted to ask. Anything. Open. Fair game.
That's right.
Right?
And we're also talking about, I think we're going to have some highlights about the dumbest things that you and I have said.
The dumbest things. Just
Jimmy,
we're gonna try to
Jimmy
hit
and
all
Billy
the-
will be on the
as
line to
many of
remind
those
us in
shows
case we
as-
forget.
That's possible.
And we're also going to be talking box sets a couple weeks from now.
Oh, and then next week before us from 9 to 10, there's that special U2 live from New York City. First U.S. date on
That's
XRT.
right.
XRT exclusive.
Well, that's a great
And we're
lead.
on 10 to midnight as usual.
That's right. Thanks for listening. We'll be back with XRT Sound Opinions next week on Tuesday night, same time, 10 o'clock.
Sound Opinions on WXRT AM and FM Chicago is brought to you by MetroMix.com, Chicago's most complete online entertainment guide. BMW, test drive the ultimate driving machine at your Group Chicago BMW Center, or visit them at BMWUSA.com, and by Clearwater Productions Talent Representatives, your multimedia entertainment company that develops projects for music, TV, and film. The opinions expressed on the preceding program did not necessarily reflect the views of WXRT staff or management, nor the opinions of Infinity Broadcasting, nor the show's sponsors. It is WXRT AM and FM Chicago.
Now go back to playing good music.
What do you mean, good music?
Good music is what we want to hear. It's what we dance to, what our children will dance to. And if you don't want to play it, then take your records and go home.